All right. I think we're live, Sid.
All right. Sweet.
All right. Everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of From the Hip, episode 8. Man, we're getting up there. This is lasting longer than I thought it would.
There you go.
But I'm here with my guest this week, the one, the only, the living legend, Chip Stetson. Chip, how the heck you doing,
buddy.
Daddy?
I'm doing great, brother. You know, I'm not gonna lie, it feels good having a weekend off after coming off last week's show a couple of weeks in a row. Feels good to actually be home, spend an evening with you, and enjoy some adult beverages. So I'm looking forward to talking shop and shooting the shit and catching up. And you know, one of the things that you may not realize is a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Most of it I probably forgot, and then when we start talking about it, it's gonna trigger some thoughts from yesteryears and everything that oh yeah, I remember that, I remember that, I remember that. So I mean, I'm actually looking forward to this because at my ripe old age, I need a little bit of a jump start to initiate everything and to help me remember a little bit.
That's always how it happens. Every time I sit down with this thing, I always tell everybody, like, I got a couple things I'd like to talk about, like to mention, and then I'm on here with guys and we go just nonstop, like twice as long as I thought, and then I'll be done. I'll be like, oh man, I never brought up that one thing. Like, what the hell? Like, you talk about one thing
Part
and
two.
remind you about something. Oh, there's already a part two list. It's just as long as the part one list. Like,
Yep.
everybody's like, oh, I need to come back on. We didn't talk about all this stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's gonna be a part two club here.
Cool.
But I'm totally looking forward to picking your brain because I mentioned before, and we talked about a little bit before we went live. Garrett Holiday and my wife in the chat, they say hi, Chip.
Hi, how you
Well,
doing?
Garrett said Uncle Chip.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
specify.
he's one of my boys without a doubt, you know.
Oh, you actually brag about that?
I do because
I'm
you
kidding,
know,
I'm kidding.
he knows where I live, so you know he may
Oh,
actually come and
that'll do it. Uh, so uh so far it's like every episode I get on here and I'm always like, man, this is great because so far every episode I get to like dive into like a different part of my wrestling history with somebody. I've had
Yep.
people on here who have helped train me. I've had guys who have had my first matches with, travel the road with. I've had, you know, just all this stuff and these different aspects. And this is like as beginning can be for me, because if people don't know, my introduction into the independent wrestling world was a company in Webster, New York by the name of New Millennium Wrestling. And Papa Chip, he was one of the guys there. I was there when he had his beautiful sweet mullet. He was
Oh
riding.
yeah.
I was there for Gigolo, Johnny Walker, Mayhem, Hellcat, the Outcast Killer,
Yep.
Diablo Santiago.
Yep.
One of my all-time favorite, JP Black. I was there for his last match before he moved to Texas as well. So a lot of great stuff there. I can't wait to really dive in on, because even though that was my beginning, I wasn't there for the beginning. And
Uh-huh.
as you saw from that picture I shared, I definitely would love to hear about Killer Kowalski Jr., because
Yep.
he's tied in with our neck of the woods.
Yep.
Trained by Kowalski, he's boys of Springgate and stuff. So super stoked to hear about that. And then I mentioned this earlier, just had my wife bring it in. But this is my New Millennium Wrestling VHS tape from way back in the early 2000s. It's got just chock full of big TV, which I did not get on Oneida. And then
Nice.
Wrestle War, which I'm pretty sure that's the show that made me hate the Milwaukee Mauler. Do you remember him?
But if you got a chance to know him, you'd be like, oh my god, he is the sweetest guy ever.
Really?
Probably too sweet. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, just such a kind-hearted guy. Like nothing. I mean, as far as we talk about, like, you know, really going out there and working hard and, you know, portraying what we're doing. He could do it, but he was nothing. He was he's a postman, dude. He
Really?
delivers mail.
That dude was
Yeah. huge.
Even
Military
for me saying
veteran.
that back then.
He's a military veteran.
I believe it.
8 years overseas, and he was one of my groomsmen in my wedding.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you know what it is you develop relationships with people when you go to wrestling school. It's just like college, no different. But and we became lifelong friends and stuff like that. I probably talked to Mahler about 3 months ago, on the whim, just
Really?
talking shop and everything like that. What are you doing? What's the kid doing? A bunch of different things, and he's doing great. I mean, he had knee replacements done, so his
Mhm.
career is pretty much done. But we relive our youth vicariously through what's going on in today's wrestling. So, um, he's a great guy. But that's awesome, dude. Like, I got to tell him that.
Well,
Uh,
next time you talk to him, you got to tell him this story because I'm going to tell you why I hated him.
okay.
And so I'm pretty sure it was this show, maybe the one before, but it was intermission, and I was going around, I was getting my ticket stub signed.
Yep.
And so I went up to like the guys who I was like I've talked to and stuff. So I had like Hellcat sign it, which is the important one because he signed the back. And so
Yep.
I asked a bunch of people like Dunn, Marcos, whoever was around, and I turn around and I see Mahler standing there and he's staring at me. And I felt guilty because he just saw me ask all these people for an autograph, but I did not want his. Like I didn't want his autograph. But he was looking at me and I was like, well, I don't want to be mean. So I'm like, oh, hey, can I get your autograph too? He looks at me, he goes, do you see my name? Milwaukee Mahler. Do you think that could fit on the back of a ticket? If you want my autograph, you need to buy one of these 8x10s.
That's right. Absolutely.
And
I
I
was
just
waiting
went,
for it.
yeah, I was like, I don't have money for an 8x10. I did, but I did not want his 8x10. So he
That's
just goes,
awesome.
fine. So he grabs my ticket and he signs his name on it. He hands it back to me. I look down. That son of a bitch wrote his name right over Hellcat's signature. And I just went,
That's awesome.
yeah, I was like, you signed over Hellcat's autograph. Like I wanted his. And he just laughed. And I go, Hellcat, he just signed over your autograph. Hellcat goes, you're a real bastard, Mahler. And then he turns back around. And I was like, so I don't get another autograph? Like, what the hell?
Oh,
And I
that's
hated that man
awesome.
for the rest of my life.
That's awesome. Oh my God. I'll remember that story. I'll definitely let him know that.
I hope you do.
Um,
You need to tell him
but-
if his knees ever feel better, get his ass up here and I'll kick his ass for it.
oh, he still, loves it and wants to come back, but he's like, there's no way. He had one of those rough recuperations from the knee
Mhm.
surgery and everything, the knee replacements, and he's like, I'm done. I'm done. He goes, I'm
That
worried
makes
about
sense.
yeah. So, but he'll pop huge for that story, dude, because I bet you he'll remember it.
I hope so. And it looks like we also have the McCormicks in the chat with us. The McCormicks say, hello, Chip.
Hello. How we doing?
The McCormicks, we guess, really interested in discussions of Killer Kowalski Jr.
Yep.
Knew him by his day job before I knew him as a local wrestling scene. Such a nice man. Okay, I need to know. I don't if Chip, if you don't know, then Dave, you got to tell me what the heck was Kowalski Jr.'s day job, because that man was 35 feet tall and looked like a serial killer.
I heard he was a UPS delivery guy. He worked for UPS.
You know what?
Seriously.
I
Seriously, that's what I heard. He worked for UPS.
Yeah, McCormick, UPS guy. I I could not imagine. Like when I first moved out here to Rochester, um, I had two jobs. Super Beast's mom got me a job working for the skate park, but it was seasonal. So the first
Yep.
like job I could get was I delivered pizzas for Pizza Hut. And I can't tell you how many times people open up that door and saw me or just like just like on instinct. I can't
Yeah.
imagine someone open the door and it's seeing Kowalski Jr. up there.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about like NMW and everything like that, Brute. It's like maybe I should probably start off with you and say that I was really never supposed to be New Millennium.
Well, really?
On the very first show, the inaugural show, a couple of the local guys from down here had canceled, and I wasn't originally planned for that show, but I had a good run going for me traveling around, East Coast. I was making my rounds in like Long Island, Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania. Um, I had hit. I want to say at that point it was Inside Wrestling. I had a small excerpt about introducing and stuff like that, and a great promotional piece. And Kenny Casanova, who was involved with World of Hurt Wrestling back in
Mhm.
the Schenectady area, had networked with JP Black and a couple of the other guys to come up and work the very first New Millennium show. Haas was one of them. He canceled, and Casanova asked me if I would go and do it. I'm like, I'm home. I'm home. Yeah, no problem. I'll take the booking. Showed up, and I think it was like Gary Steinmiller, Hellcat, all the guys that were in position of power up there. Were like, where's Haas? Where's Haas? Like, oh, he canceled and everything. So he never actually told the promotion. But we brought up Chip Stetson for you. And then, which was kind of cool because I had worked one show prior that there was this Lionheart Todd something, and Hellcat worked the show, and may have been like a ring rental for a show that we were having. And I had met him once, and we had gotten along and everything. It was civil and everything. And then when I came up to Rochester, it was just like, wait, he's like, I know you and everything like that. He's like, well, shit, He told Gary Steinmiller, who was the owner of New Millennium, we just got a better deal. You have no idea. And that's when they were having the inaugural, tournament and everything. So I said to him, like, if you need more than one match from me, no problem, whatever you need, like let's you got a packed house at the Yuki Club. They're hot. I'll do multiple appearances for you for the night. And he goes, great, awesome. We're gonna slingshot you to the heavyweight tournament and have you wrestle Killer Kowalski Jr. Are you okay with that? I just met him, and I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll do whatever you want. So, I had gotten through the first match, easy, quick match. Second match was a little bit harder. Going into the main event that night against Kowalski, and it was quick. He pretty much squashed me out and everything. He got a little bit of a shine, but not too much. Put him over hard and everything. You know what the thing is? Kowalski, nicest guy, very humble, very polite to everybody. But what I was trying to find out was because he passed away not long after that, or stepped away from wrestling.
Mhm.
And I didn't know if he was sick at the time or not. No one ever said anything, just that he had to take some time off to deal with things. So I didn't know what the end result was, like why he stepped away.
Um, I remember when he passed away. It was like real close to when Killer Kowalski passed away, because
Yeah.
2CW had a show in Watertown, and we did a 10-bell salute, and for both Kowalski and Kowalski Jr. And so that had to have been like 2007, maybe 2008. I think it was really early on.
Yeah.
And 2CW started in 2006. If Fenton was here, he'd be able to tell us. But yeah, it was something like that. But I'm not really sure if I've heard anyone say what the reasoning was to what it was. But some people seem kind of shocked by it, though. No one ever seemed like they were expecting it, especially like
Yeah.
with Springgate and stuff. So
Now, didn't he marry that one girl though that was also involved, like Valene? Was her name Felicity or something weird like that? He was in a relationship, unless I'm letting a cat out of the bag and it was his rat. I don't know, but
that I'm not sure. I've heard the name Felicity before, but I haven't heard about those two, unless
yeah.
that was on the down low as well. So that one I'm not
Oops.
sure about.
Um,
Someone out there probably knows. If I ever
yeah,
get Springgate on this thing, I'll be like, "Hey, Chip wants to know."
yeah. Was Felicity a rat? Well, she was doing ballet work for New Millennium in the beginning, and they were always traveling together. So I had heard that they were an item. Um, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I could have sworn someone had said that they had gotten married and stuff. But Springate should know for sure. I'm positive, but um, he didn't last. He didn't last very very long, and then we rolled right into the Jason Atlas era of New Millennium. But I mean,
Jason
I
Atlas.
just I remember Kowalski was just so big, and he would throw me like I'd say it was like bail me out of the corner, and here he is, damn near 7 feet tall. I'm probably 11 feet in the air on a Beal, and so strong. And he didn't even look. He looked almost like Ethiopian tall. But boy, he launched me. And at that point I was probably only about 165 pounds. So probably, it's not saying so much. It's not too hard to throw somebody, as that's 165. You can launch them if they work with you. But very appreciative afterwards for putting them over and everything like that. I never had one bad issue with him whatsoever.
From what I found here, it said he was survived by his wife of 6 years, Nicole Constantino. I'm not sure, was that her shoot name?
Don't know.
Instead of 6 years, so could have fit the timeline.
Could have. I mean, they always traveled. They always travel together and everything. But I if I oh boy, I want to say I was talking to Oman Tortuga after he had passed and everything about what they had heard, and he had heard organ failure.
Garrett saying heart attack.
Really?
Yeah. Which
or
is
he
weird,
thinking of
like you said, he was really tall, but he was pretty. I don't want to say scrawny, but he wasn't like big, tall, and wide. He was very
right.
He had the tendon strength.
Right, and he was young. He was young. I mean, when he passed away, he couldn't have been much more than 35.
How tall was he?
From what I remember, he was 6'11".
Okay, so he might have had some mild form of like giantism or something like that, where with his glands. So that usually cuts your life down pretty well. I slightly remember it back when I was in school.
Yeah, let alone organs. You know what I mean? Kidneys, liver, everything starts shutting down because you're growing. It's he was just humongous.
Yeah.
And his skull, I just remember like his skull was humongous, just huge, facial structure and everything. I mean, if that doesn't, I'm actually surprised he wouldn't have gotten signed right away just for looking like that. You know what I mean? As far as Vince McMahon always likes stuff that's considered like oddities and everything. Imagine if he didn't pass, like he very easily could have been signed to like the oddities gimmick without a doubt.
Oh, yeah, he definitely would have fit in with that one, even if he was just like the guy who came down with him.
Yeah,
he definitely would have.
Yeah,
but man, also that Ukrainian club that you mentioned, that because like I remember going in there, man, and it was the shows that I went to, that it was always packed, and like the Ukrainian club was a very deep venue. Like, well, it was pretty wide. You could fit a bunch of rows, but it was deeper than it was wide. And I just remember, looking down and seeing them going all the way back to the wall and stuff. And they're always like real hot and real great. I loved that venue. It had the stage, the walkway. I heard the ring was a shitty bump, but like it all looked good. And Kevin Dunn used to say that ring was like horrible.
Yeah, I mean, any first ring Kevin Dunn was a product of that training school. So whenever you're learning to take the bumps and everything like that, it probably would be normal to consider the ring that you're working in to be too stiff and everything while you're learning the craft. You were talking about the depth of the crowds and the seats and everything like that. Do you want to know how special that was? I mean, you could go back and think about it. And Hellcat and I talk about this all the time. And you're gonna know exactly where I'm going with this, brother. Do you realize that the New Millennium crowd really was fans that wanted wrestling, and it wasn't just the boys selling tickets and putting asses in seats?
You could tell because as deep as it was, by the main event, half of them weren't gone because they left after their friend was done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And it's just, I mean, those days, you know, what it would take to get them back again, but just to draw a house with people that were, you know, and it was, I remember the Ukrainian hall too, because it was right in front of Walmart, in Webster, and there was always a sign out by the road right in front of it that was like pro wrestling Saturday night. You know, they would have it on a main strip, and I remember many occasions the lines wrapped around the building, and it would almost get to the point because it's in the back of that area behind the stage where the locker rooms were. They were classrooms. You know what I mean? Because they would, you know, they'd have it'd be a special school too for, you know, Ukrainian people, you know, that would have the religion classes and everything. So we would actually go in, you know, we'd get changed in a classroom, and it would be a tight fit, real tight fit. So a lot of us would hang out after you get changed. You go down the back hallway and hang out outside. There was one time where there was 20 fans deep going around the back side of the building. We're like, oh shit, we can't hang out back here and work out our match and everything because we got a crowd over here lining up around the building. And, you know, 20 minutes before bell time, Hellcat coming back and saying, hey, gang, sold out, standing room only. We already sold out 370 seats on the floor, and now it's standing room only. We got to be careful because fire marshal's going to show up, and 425 was the maximum capacity. And I know that they were actually there a couple times with the clicker counting bodies as they're walking through the audience and around the back area to find out how many people were actually in the building. So that's always a damn good feeling. You know what I mean? Saying, all right, standing room only, 425, you know, and, you know, when it comes to indie shows and everything, like, you know, Mike brought in a who's who of pro wrestling back in the new millennium era. I mean, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Bobby Roode, you know, Samoa Joe. Like he's
Beth Phoenix. Didn't she stop by?
Beth Phoenix and Bobby Shields, an intergender match that I from what I'm hearing, that helped lead to her get an OVW deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she sent that match down there, and that was one of the things that after, from what I'm hearing, a couple attempts that they're like, yeah, all right, you know, we see something in you and you're tough enough, so come on down, and she didn't get a deal yet off the rip, but still nonetheless, but because she's an Elmira girl anyway, so it's not like she traveled too far, but you know, that helped lead to her getting a job, which is, you know, even more better. But as far as like New York independent wrestling back then, with the exception of, like I said to you earlier, USWF and Elmira running shows when Loke and I were at wrestling school, there was nowhere else running unless you were going to go down to Long Island for like Lou Reardon with Eastern States Wrestling, or Schenectady with World of Hurt or New Breed Wrestling. There was nobody up in Western New York running at that point. So that was the beauty of promoting shows and everything up that way, because people were waiting for WWE or WCW to come back to town, and they wanted their wrestling fix in the meanwhile. So it was the right time, you know, for New Millennium to start up. It's a hotbed.
Yeah, back then, like, looking around, the only other companies ever like came across during that time was the World of Hurt that you mentioned in Schenectady, and then there was Tri-State Wrestling in Vermont with White Lion,
Jim Turner. Yep.
And then I believe there was Pena in wrestling for a hot minute.
Oh, well, I would say Penn York.
Penn York, that's what it was.
Really, yeah, that didn't start up with Don Allen till probably, I'm going to say 2004.
Okay.
2005.
I remember
So
being earlier.
New Millennium still had 2.5 years
Hmm.
on them easy.
Yeah.
And that was really only around for a cup of coffee. I mean, I think DA only ran like 4 shows
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
And I was on
Let's
all
see.
of them. I was on all of you know. Oh,
Let's see.
sorry, Lucy.
Cat.
Cat, my wife's pride and joy. She just came down.
Hey, I'm
But
a cat person. I approve.
yeah,
I
yep, it's good.
my cat
I
left me.
I have a 34-pound orange Garfield cat.
You're gonna make my wife jealous.
Oh, he's my chunk. He's my big boy. Oh yeah.
We got a black cat named Alistair, and he's a mini panther. He's massive.
Ooh.
he is he is a big boy. I got him. I named him Alistair Black Cat. So I thought, so I thought it was
Wow.
funny.
Wow. That's awesome. But
Yeah. See, something else I wanted to say about because New Millennium they also had you guys also had kind of a pretty smart business model where the main shows at the Ukrainian club were like every other month, but then at the Suplex U, you guys would do very small, like TV type tapings at the school in the in between months. So you would
yep.
film the product for TV. You can do the matches. You can make a little extra money, but you're pretty much building to those big shows in the Ukrainian club. So
Mhm.
there was still a constant like stream, still a constant events, but you weren't like killing the market by running every month or having a show and then like, oh, we'll be back here again in 3.5 weeks or whatever. So
Right.
it was a really good business module, and it's really hard to have that in New York State now. I'm not sure what it was like back then because now if you're on the commission, if you even wanted to run a school show, and be like, oh, we can fit 20 fans in here, and we're just gonna have some students wrestle, whatever. And they're like, well, you still need a doc, you still need EMT, you still need this and that. So it's not very financially stable these days, but
No.
as far as drawing goes, that's a really good like business plan to have.
Right. And they were using public access for a while up there to get their name out, but then they ended up getting in with the My UPN network to actually air a lot of their stuff. And Scotty Bender was one of the main voices of New Millennium Wrestling.
Scotty.
So he would go through and do the editing with Randall J. Burton on a lot of stuff. And we would film vignettes all the time of various things. And I remember, I would probably go up, being that we would go every other month with the shows, and then every now and then have like a fair show. Like we did is it Palmyra Fair?
Hmm.
We did some of those and stuff, some fair shows, and like you know, so we needed constant product to be able to keep storylines going and angles. Heck, I think I beat Big Cat Lemur at one of the student tapings after he beat me on a bigger Ukrainian Hall show for the TV title. I think I took it back from him at one of the student shows. But that's what made everybody crisp and better. You know what I mean? And no, we didn't. The commission wasn't there on those. The smart thing that Gary Steinmiller did is they registered as a licensed training facility. And back then, there wasn't rules and regulations about what you can and what you can't do at your training schools. Just that you were a authorized training facility for professional wrestling, and the commission wouldn't come out, wasn't subjected to X number of students getting drug tested for steroids or anything like that. It was just, you paid to have a classified training academy so that anybody that was going to go through your school, the assumption was that they were trained the right way and would be, better for the business and be able to conduct themselves the way that the athletic commission felt that it should be done.
Why is that not a thing anymore?
Well, I've been ever since they stopped doing wrestling licenses. I think the New York State Athletic Commission, they didn't care about the training schools so much to a degree at that point. And it was I wish I really knew. I think when the New Jersey governor, I want to say her name was Christina Todd, who was instrumental in reducing the classification on sports entertainment and wrestling as a whole. Because I know Vince McMahon in WWE was fighting that forever in regards to the tax brackets that they would pay in New York State for what's considered a sports entertainment industry as compared to pro wrestling. I only wish that it transferred over to this side. I mean, big difference between 6 to 10,000 seat arenas compared to 425 maximum seat capacities. But Athletic Commission really stopped caring more about the wrestlers, and it was more about the politics and licensing and getting their cut, whether it was through taxes and or dealing with the doctors. You know what I mean? And having their own approved doctors. Because here's the thing, like, we worked Immortal last weekend, and the doctor that was there and everything, he actually had to send his credentials and license and everything to the commission to get registered through them. If you can imagine, that's how much of a work it is. It's like, oh, they're a New York State Athletic Commission licensed physician. So what does that really mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like,
especially all he does, like, I'm not saying like he doesn't, like, he sits on his ass and is lazy, but in New York State, I've never seen a doctor do more than take my blood pressure, write down my name, and then slap me on the ass and say, go get him, and then I never see him again.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I've never seen, well, I guess I've seen a couple doctors who, come back and like check on someone who's got like a stinger or something, but yeah, it's really not a whole heck of a lot.
No, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of money, especially in New York State right now. Like, here we are, we have an MD at the wrestling shows, but we also have to have EMTs. Why do we need an ambulance?
Did I ever tell you the story where me and Father Derek almost killed the doc and the EMTs at an Immortal show like a year or two ago?
No.
I'm jumping ahead going into Immortal, but this fucking story, man. So I think it was the Halloween Havoc show, I believe, but we had Ted Stillwell with us, and he was reffing for you that night, and he was doing a pull apart with like Papa Don and Ben and them, because I can never remember her name, but that one, the women's champion who was like the goddess, the Valkyrie Athena girl there.
Are you talking about Megan Bain?
Okay, yeah, I think that's what Megan. I remember Megan. Yeah, so there was like a pull apart. Something happened, and Ted's in there, like, oh, pulling everyone off. She spins around and she pops Ted right in the face, punches him square in the eye, busts
Legit.
him open. Yep, legit.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, if she wasn't expecting it, she thought it was a fan, or like what it was, but she just spun when Ted grabbed her and she spun around, she popped him right in the face. And there's like a picture I posted because Ted's hair was like all fuzzy. He had like a goatee. He had blood coming down his face, and he looked like a mini Nick Gage. So I like posted a picture about him being Nick Gage or whatever. But he comes up to me. He's like, Brute, I'm not okay. I go, what do you mean? He's like, I'm not okay. I don't feel right. He's like, he was freaking concussed. He was out. He was bleeding and shit. So I'm like, hold on. Let me get like the doc for you. So we can't find the doc. We're running around. I'm asking everybody. I'm asking King. Derek's helping me find him. We finally find him and his wife, who's hanging out with him. He comes back. He's like, oh, what's going on? And so Ted's like telling him, like, I don't like, what's what happened? I feel like I'm gonna pass out and all this stuff. Like, I'm not feeling okay. Like, I'm bleeding. Like, do I need stitches and stuff? So the doc's like, no, you're fine. Just do whatever. Take some Tylenol. You're fine. He like leaves, and I'm just like, you're not gonna fucking clean him up at least. So I tell Derek I find the doc. I tell Derek what happens, and I don't know if you know Derek, but it takes a lot to get him pissed off. He turned red. He's like, "I'm gonna go get the doc." He brings him
Yeah.
right back in. It was like, "Can you clean him up? Like he's covered in blood. Can you please clean him up for us?" So the doc hands Ted like gauze and something and tells Ted to clean himself up. And
Eek.
he walks away. And I'm just like, that motherfucker owes King his money back because he's not doing his job. He's making people do their own job. So we get the EMTs. We're just like, could you please help our friend? He is bleeding and he is concussed. Can somebody do something? So they kind of look at him. They like wipe off his face and they're just like, well, there's nothing we can do. We can only like call another ambulance if you want to go to the hospital. And Ted's like, no, I just want this cleaned and taken care of and like go home or whatever. So the
Yeah.
EMT's like left, the doctor left, and Derek is now cleaning off Ted, putting gauze on, putting the ointment on, wrapping him up, and like cleaning him off. And I'm just sitting there like livid. And I'm just like, you're the doctor. Why aren't you doing anything? The EMTs aren't doing anything. I was like, my friend is legit concussed, bleeding from the brow and bruised, and 3 medical staffs refuse to do anything. And I can only imagine how much those 3 cost you guys that night and for
Right.
what.
Yeah. 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 I mean, they even if they volunteered for a tax write-off, even normally it ranges anywhere between $250 to $350 for the doctor alone. Um, that's awful. I mean, there and by law, per athletic commission bylaws, they are supposed to be there for the entire event and be Johnny on the spots to make sure that people are okay. So yeah, that's probably why that doctor's not around anymore that he was
Yep, he's
using
never been
before.
back.
Yeah,
Because I went right up to King and I was like, you need to get your money back from him or never bring him back because he did nothing. And I
yeah,
think my wife, she was like at the show. Was she at the show? Somebody was telling me like he was just like, or she was telling me like in another show, he just was sitting in the back, just like mocking the wrestlers and like talking shit about him or something like that. Yeah, like he just laughing at him or something. Like he was a very like prim and proper guy. Like you could tell, like he did not think much of the wrestling world. So he must have been there for a write off or for a payday
yeah,
or something. But he had no intentions on looking after anybody
yeah.
whatsoever, and I was pissed. Um, let's see what did my wife just say about him here. Oh, it was Garrett. Yeah, that guy wasn't the greatest. When Papanon got hurt in a match with a person I shall not name, the guy barely wanted to help him. Of course, that guy was a legit hospital deal, but I never seen that guy help anyone the right way. My wife, yeah, he just does not care and was making fun of everyone and telling his wife it was all fake and stupid. But hey, there's pizza. And McCor-
You know that I think that was right before I came in. It must have been right before I came in because I wasn't there. Shane and I only hit our 1 year like 2 months ago. So we've only been in an Immortal for a year and 2 months. So that was definitely before us.
I think
Um,
I think that was the night Skyros won the King's ransom. So did you come in like after that?
just after that, because I think he
Okay.
won that right before the Kanajihari show.
Yeah, this was
And
in some weird basketball court that like we haven't been back to since because it was just not a good draw. Yeah, Garrett said it was
okay,
before Chip came in. Well, not
yeah,
now you know.
yeah,
McCormick, the DODF agents back in the day that were doctors on camera would have been more help. Dr. Strongbow and Dr. Patterson.
yeah. If only we had Dr. Zahorian from WWE, you know what I mean? We'd be all set. He'd be taking care of the boys, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, the freak, um when I wrestled out in Pennsylvania, man, that one crazy haired doctor, Cat.
Mhm.
He was a WWF doc. I can't remember his name, but he was he was a character. I loved him. He was walked with like this weird limp, and he had like Doc Brown hair. It's like, oh, that was a great match. I loved it. It was so awesome. He was
Well,
absolutely.
I'll tell you a funny story because I'm implicating myself. So my wife has given birth to two 10+ pound baby boys for me. For that, for a 5'7" woman, I'm forever in debt for the gift. So it came time for me to return the favor and get the gimmick job done.
Mhm.
And the guy that did mine used to be a doctor for WWE locally, and he was a urologist by trade, obviously. And he would tell me stories about how he would have to write scripts for a lot of the boys that would have like VD diseases and shit like that. I'm like, really? And he goes, 2 out of 10 we're getting antibiotics by the end of the night because they'd be sitting there be like, Doc, it hurts to pee. And he goes, really? The burn? Yeah. Have you been with it? Have you had unprotected sex? Yeah, probably. All right, you need to get on something. You know what I mean? And the goal. And I'm like, what era was this? And he's just like, oh, this was back in like mid to late 80s. And I'm like, really? That's freaking awesome, because that's when the Rats were like at their peak. As compared to the boys going back and playing video games now and stuff like that. Those were the old days where they went out to the clubs and picked up people and brought them back. And right now, since ECW has there been that type of element out there, because you barely find it on the indie scenes. Obviously, like we're all either married or with significant others and stuff. So we're good boys. Obviously, I'm going to put ourselves over for a second, brother. You know what I mean? Because you already said your wife is listening. You know,
we're good boys.
Yeah, well, at least we're smart about it. We bring our wives to the shows. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're going off somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
keeping an eye on me.
absolutely, man. Happy wife, happy life. You know what I mean? I get it. I get it. Trust me. In this day and age, it's not worth it. Let me ask you a question on that note.
Okay.
How long have you been married?
Got married in 2019. So 3 years.
3. Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question. For your years into business, how many wrestling weddings have you been to?
I don't think any. I think I missed them.
Did you?
Yeah, because Studley got, because I remember when we were in 2CW, they're always talking about, because like when Studley Steve got married, he had a big wrestling wedding. And I think the next person who got married in the group was Jason Axe down in Florida. I wasn't there. Oh, Justin Parker, he got married. I was at his wedding.
Okay, so quick, out of those 3 people that you just named, are they all still married?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
All right, because I like so many of the weddings. I'm not saying this to get Garrett Holiday in an uproar or anything. He's got a good one at home, but so many of the weddings that my wife and I have been to in the business, man, they, multiple marriages and divorces and everything. Like, we've gotten to the point where we're like, well, shit, are me and my wife normal and everything? Because all these people from these weddings that we've gone to over the years people are divorcing left and right, and it's just like, is there something wrong with us? Are we missing the point or something like that? But
yeah, my wife and I always say the same thing. Are we normal?
Yeah. Seriously, it's it's shocking. Like, I'm gonna say, like, out of the 13 weddings that we've been to, 10 of them are divorced in the wrestling business, and it's like, and they're already remarried and on to other relationships. You're like, what the hell's going on with this? You know what I mean? But
see, I think the reason why ours might be different, like the Studley, Jason Axe, Justin, we us men, we were the outcasts, the weirdos. Like we were like the freaking, we didn't have women all over us. We weren't out doing crazy stuff. We're just like, we found women and we're lucky. Like
Mm,
Axe and his wife, they're completely happy. Axe was I don't want to blow a spot, but he was a very introverted guy. Like I was around, well, not around, but like I was there to hear about how he met his wife and everything. And same with like Justin. And then if you ever seen Studley and his wife, they are just like-minded individuals who are just meant to be together. So it's
that's
probably
awesome.
just different breed. And then back in the day, man, I'm sure it was crazier cats who just jumped into it too soon or just couldn't shake the nightlife, I guess. Because
Right.
I always say this too, like when I was in Japan, I went over to Japan with Freddie, and I always said that we were like Chris Jericho and Lance Storm because, like, I went out, I did stuff, but by and large, especially if we had training the next morning, like Freddie would go out drinking. I would walk down the street, grab a donut, a chocolate milk, and something else, go back to the dojo, watch dodgeball for the 100th time, and then go to bed. Like,
Yep.
yeah, we were just like, it was just night and day. Like he was a big partier. I was like, I'm gonna relax and unwind and get some sleep because I have to do 300 Hindu squats tomorrow. And
Yeah.
it's just different strokes for different folks.
Right. Right. And same here, dude. Like for a while there, I would go out like after like the New Millennium shows and everything. Like we would go to like certain like restaurants where they would have like sponsors would have like happy hours and stuff like that where we would go out. My date was Mike Rosario's ex-wife because I am. I'm like, all right, I would travel out for the night, but I'd be, like engaged to my wife or whatever the case may be. If we were married at the point, but she was home pregnant with Shane, I would spend the night, get a night's sleep, and then come back home the next morning. But I would be Jill's date for the night because Mike would be out running around doing different things, networking, and I would sit with his wife and have dinner and a drink and low key, because for me it was safer that way. But so many of the other guys were just like, you'd see people come and go, and like, that's not the same person that you were with earlier today. That and I'm like, wow, okay, so be it. People living the star life and everything, but
I mean,
for me,
I
yeah,
I've definitely seen that in the beginning, like when TCW like first started, it was definitely a wrestling company. Like I knew enough to see some guys with some girls and stuff like that, and I still remember um I knew her. I might have talked to her once or twice, but she was always around. She was always talking to all the boys. She was always at the after party. She was always, the first in line. She was always getting the wrestlers' attention. I knew enough, and then later I found out that she had a nickname, and her name was Master Splinter because she was the head rat. So, I
so
mean, that
all
was
right, so
2CW in the early years, but by the time I got in, like there was no more rats. Everybody was settled down or married or whatnot.
yeah.
So that was long gone by the time I started wrestling.
I'll tell you my funniest story. It was the night that I met my wife. It was after a show in Saratoga Springs. I met her at this dance club bar, and I was there with primetime Brian Lee, um, yep, Greg Valentine,
Jesus.
um,
So you're looking good by
right,
comparison so far.
yeah, yeah, um, a couple guys that had trained Loke and I had a hand in it. Rod and John, the Pittsburgh Steel team, they were some ECW guys that were in Team Taz.
Oh, okay.
And a couple other guys. So, you know, like back in that day, like they used to do that liquid ecstasy. It was a clear liquid. It looked like it was inside of like a baby oil bottle. All right. And they would flip it upside down and squeeze it into the cap, and they take a shot of it. So it was like undetected. Like it didn't smell or anything, but it was liquidy. We were at the bar, and like Brian Lee, I thought for sure was going to get us all in a fight because everybody that walked by looked like Jim Cornette to him, and he's screaming, he's screaming, "Corny, Corny, is that you? Is that you?" Because this was definitely after Smoky Mountain and everything like that. So, so we're sitting there, and Valentine is just, you could just tell he didn't want to be there, and so he ended up going back to his room, and there was a promotion for Eastern Shores or Eastern States Wrestling. So we're walking around, and I met my wife through somebody else, and we were just hanging out, with the girls and stuff and chilling. Mahler was with me. We were at the Holiday Inn Turf in Albany, and I'm like, all right. So we were down there at the bar, and next thing I know, Brian Latham, the promoter, comes running down, and he's like, Chip, you got to see this. You got to see this. I said, what's the matter? And he goes, you remember those two girls? I'm like, yeah. They followed Primo Carnera and a bunch of them up to their rooms, and I can't get in. I'm like, shit. All right. So back then I had keys to everybody's because I booked them. So Brian's like, I got to get in. I got to, because he was also a diabetic and everything. And he had too much alcohol, liquor, where his sugar jacked up. And he's like, I got to get into my room, brother. So I'm like, all right, come on, let's go to our room. So Mahler and I go running with him to our room. I get the spare key. I go on up there, and sure as shit, there's one of the rats, spread eagle, and 4 guys running a train on her. I'm like, oh, god damn. So then I'm like, go get your stuff. Go get your stuff. And he goes, all right. He goes, but let me knock on this door over here, because this is where the other room where the boys are. That's where John and, some of the other guys' rooms are. I'm like, all right. So he knocked on the door. Sure as shit, there's the other girl. and I'm like,
this fucking Survivor Series going on.
Literally. So then he goes to me, he goes, can you guys just take me back to your guys' area, please? I'm sure there's going to be no any surprises in there, because Mahler was married and everything like that. All Brian needed to do was take his injection and stabilize and everything. I'm like,
guy.
You know what I mean? So yeah, we're going up to the 4th floor. We were on the 3rd floor. We'll go up to the 4th floor, and we could store your stuff in our room, and we can go back down. Okay. And meanwhile, we go on down, and Brian Lee is out there with his shirt off, dancing on the dance floor with, I want to say 6 girls around him. I'm like, that's not my responsibility tonight. That's not my responsibility tonight. That was actually the last time I saw Brian Lee. I don't know if he ever came back to the town or what, or anything like that, but it was just Mahler and I were just like, man, this is these guys are too intense and everything. And they were the nastiest women that I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, this is, oh my God, what I mean?
And this might be my best opportunity to have the most perfect transition for this question, and maybe it's nothing, maybe it goes nowhere, but there's something I've always wanted to ask the NMW guys. So during those times, those late 2000s towards the end, that's also when I was doing a lot of wrestling message board stuff, because back then that was a huge deal in the wrestling community. We're always on message boards doing shit.
Yep.
And you'll see why this is the segue. So I remember actually reading a news article, because at the time there was another company that I started following and keeping an eye on called XPW. And I remember seeing on the a board one time, because Rob Black is from Rochester, they're saying that there was some talk or communication between XPW and NMW. Never really elaborated on what or why, but I was just always wondering, during NMW, did anybody have any communication with Rob Black during that time, or is that just random bullshit?
That's random bullshit. Now I do know this, all right. Mike Rosario had been in talk. He had heard from Rob Black recently,
Hmm.
and Rob Black was making an offer to purchase UPW because he wanted to start back up in Monroe County. And obviously, come on, Lucy. Um,
She's the next guest.
yes, she's over. Um, Back then, though, no,
Okay.
no. Back then in the day, there really wasn't anything. And I think XPW was strictly in Van Nuys, California, and
Yes. Yep.
he had his porn business that was funding everything.
Mhm.
So, even with Rob Black being from Rochester, he wouldn't have even like ran it or done anything. You know what I mean? Because when you're in California, why would you want to come back to New York anyway? So,
I know that's why I was always wondering because like even like now I heard like him like reaching out trying to buy and shit. I just because
yeah,
I remember in between now and XPW closing, he I'm not gonna blow into one spot, but there was a wrestler from the area who even talked to me and Dick and be like, oh, he's gonna start back up and he wants to use me and I'm gonna put words in for you, him, and all this stuff. But I know there was talk when before he relaunched, and this was years ago, so like nothing came from it for a while. But he always said when he brought back XPW, he was going to have two different brands, like Raw and SmackDown. Like he wanted to do like a brand that was like this and a brand that was like that. So my brain always wondered if he was going to do like deathmatch wrestling on the West Coast where it was legal, but then he would have another brand like based in New York where he's from, where he'd have to like do more stuff in line with athletic commission. So he'd kind of have like XPW West would be the extreme, and XPW East would be like the tame shit. So, like when I saw that, that always popped in my head. I was like, I wonder if that was that back then. If he wanted like a West Coast and East Coast thing, which he eventually did when he started running Viking Hall and shit. So, this is
right.
something I always wondered.
Right. He had never been to any of the shows. He never came backstage. And I was pretty much prevalent to a lot of the major stuff that was going on. Hellcat and I have been very, very close over the years. And I would probably consider myself one of his first lieutenants, right hand guys that would, you know, give my opinion. I would hear things that they had going on, so on and so forth. I would be asked a lot of back in the day. He would have me wrestle a lot of the guys and give my honest opinion on them,
Mhm.
on whether they deserve to be around. Um, and there was never a talk around me or Rob Black being backstage at any of the events when I was there. And I was on I have wrestled on every single New Millennium show. So he was never there.
Okay.
You know, if if
Mhm.
if he if he had
I
called
kind of
Gary
figured.
Steinmiller, yeah, if he had called Gary Steinmiller, I still probably would have heard about it because Gary would have called me and said, "Hey, Chip, do you know this Rob Black guy? He's offered me this much money. What do you think I should do? Is it worth it?" And stuff like that. And I never heard anything about Rob Black with New Millennium.
That
I
makes
would have.
sense.
I would have.
Um, So, so for anyone didn't know this part, this is kind of where I'd first dropped the bomb to Chip and everything. So when I found out about New Millennium. I became a fan, started following and all that. And then real quick, just because like this is during the time in like high school where because the internet was becoming a thing. Like I remember I had a class where I learned how to do websites. They were teaching us how to do HTML, and one of our final projects was making a website. So I made like a Taz website because I'm a mark. So coming in here, like I said at the time, I was following like XPW, CZW, Jersey All Pro, and all this stuff. And there was a very famous fan site for ECW back in the day called Strictly ECW. So one day I had the idea. I was like, I'm going to make an NMW fan site, and I'm going to call it Strictly NMW, just for shits and giggles. So I
Yep.
did, and I just started posting stuff, and I got really lucky because about the time I started doing that, a bunch of NMW guys got to be on Jacked. like JP Black, Eric Everlast.
Yep.
So like I was like, oh hey, NMW jacked and all this stuff. So I had like cool stuff to do, and I was making a cool website, just having fun with it. And then like I went to the next NMW show, and like guys like Raptor were coming up to me, and we're just like man, your website has more info about us than the actual website does. Like you update that stuff all the time, and you do stuff. Like I go to your website to find out what's going on now. Like, so I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's cool. And
Yeah.
eventually Terry's just like, hey, do you just want to do the website? And I was like, yes, I do. So I took over nmw2000.com. I passed along strictly NMW to Rob Sanderson.
Yep.
And so that's when I started like taking over stuff. And I went in and I just kind of like retooled it. Like there's some issues with like the menu, and I like to fix stuff, and I started making additions and trying to make it as interactive as possible. And Terry would always like email me and be like, oh hey, do this, don't do this, add this. And then one day I got an edict from him where he's like, hey, we're partnering with this new company, and I need you to like put the stuff on there. So he gave me this information for Outlaw Wrestling. Was that what it was in Albany?
Outlaw
24/7.
24/7.
That okay, 24/7. I knew it was one of them. So is that yep, the 24 wrestling there, and so we had to put it all in there, and that was your deal, right? Out in Albany,
Yes.
the school and those shows,
Yeah, actually Schenectady, but yeah,
Schenectady.
yep. 24/7 was mine. I had a student, underage student that I was working with, and the idea, um, there's a lot of like inner city kids in Schenectady that high dropout rate from school back then, at risk kids for crime, that huge wrestling fans. So we had networked a lot with the schools, and worked up a relationship with them to try to help get the kids off the streets. And it was almost like the Matt Rats from Canada with Teddy Hart and Harry
Mhm.
Smith back in the day, where they would actually like bring under 18-year-old high school students to like this training facility to like help them live out a dream and hopefully like deter them from hitting the streets and to have a life of crime and everything. So Luke was one of my kids, and his father's a money mark and more of a mark for himself more than anything else. So we opened up a training dojo. I would run SPW, which would be Superstars of Pro Wrestling,
Yes.
and Luke would do FSPW, which would be Future Superstars of Pro Wrestling, and the minor group. But I would have my hand in that as well too. So we would actually hold of it, and we got licensed as an actual training facility in New York State. So it was almost like we were given, we had the full blessing from the athletic commission and everything. We didn't have to buy the insurance. We had an aggregate building liability, but we didn't have to do a lot of the rules and regulations that they would, want us to have, which was great. And we would do Friday night events in Schenectady, and some Saturdays too, but mostly Fridays. And here I am, 170 people, standing room only, in a 3,000 square foot space, packed house. So it was one of those things where we were actually able to like, so now go back in hindsight for a second, talk about New Millennium running shows every other month. We talk about their training dojo that would have a supplemental, and then throw mine into it. So like sometimes back then the boys would be wrestling 3 times a month, you know, and we would run every month. And my job was to, and it's also like what helped get me ready for like a lot of the position that I'm in today, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is
Mhm.
more involved with the agenting and producing from behind the scenes. I was going to every match aside from that on a show, but also at the training school, preparing them for it, working out a storyline and everything, and having them go through the whole different stages, and then showcasing it for the monthly show, and integrating a lot of the guys from Rochester on down, veterans that with the intention of helping the younger generation have a better understanding as far as what is going on in the business. And we would, I'd have Don down and he'd wrestle against one of my students. Hellcat would come down, wrestle a student and everything like that. So it was a hands-on internship with a lot of the people. But the goal at hand, and I'm not saying that every kid would be at risk for dropping out. Like that's where I trained Kayla Sparks.
Hmm.
And Kayla was not a bad student or anything like that. She was just a lifelong wrestling fan since she was very, very small. So, it was unique. And then obviously, Luke's father had a scheme, grand scheme that when his son turned 18, after being around me for 2 years and picking up my knowledge, I was going to get the good brother out the door and they were going to take over my class. And turns out when they planned on doing that, everybody from my class had already gotten, someone stooged everybody off and they all walked. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
it's just because they didn't think about it in hindsight. Like the connections that I had were going to be far greater than what they would have had, because they knew they would have lost everything. They would have lost their connections to Rochester and everything like that. So for them, it was they were prepared to take that risk to keep the money inside just father and son and not a three-way partnership. And I don't I feel bad for Luke because he kind of like he got forced into it from his stepdad and everything, but nothing ever became of it. I think, this is the same kid that like cut half of his foot off from sticking it in the lawnmower because it was clogged up and it was running and it cut like all of his toes off and everything like that. So it's kind of like, I think you go back to the old school, like the Nick Gulius days and everything like that, where it's like, daddy said to sell, you know what I mean? It was almost just like stuff like that, dude. It was that bad. And at that point too, bro, I had just lost my grandfather and it was the first big family hurt in my life. So, and I was hurting, you know what I mean? At this point, I was solid 10 years into business. I needed a break. My body was hurting, so I was good with like ending that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing's worse than being a glorified baby. Like, I mean, wrestling schools are such a critical thing in our industry. But man, being a glorified babysitter, especially when ring dues are due every month, I don't miss it. I feel like
Yeah.
Rocky Balboa chasing people down, down by the locks to get the money that they owe and everything like that. I'm like, oh my God. I don't miss that part. That was awful.
Yeah. eh, yeah, usually like at our school, Spring would just walk in and just like yell and be like, all right, everybody, time to pay your dues. And everyone would just like walk up, hand them their shit. You just see them
Yep.
like count it real quick, and then the next person, and then you just pocket it, and then that
Yeah.
would be it.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
but,
Occasionally, you
but
have to
it's
be like, "Oh, you're like 2 months behind. If you don't pay me tomorrow, like, don't show up Thursday or whatever." But nothing too
right,
bad.
right, right. But it's just always like, I used to get so mad. I would be, and this is, here I am training adults, over 18. And, I'm living in Dwaynesburg, you know, married, wife is pregnant, get out of work, go down to the school for a 2.5 hour class, and one person show up when I should have eight. And it's like no common courtesy, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
like, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. I'm like, oh, I was ready for it to end, to be honest with you. And we were six. I mean, it ran for 2 years. You know what I mean? It's not like we had a short run or anything like that. We
mhm,
lasted 2 full years. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So, and one Dr. Tom camp and one Tony Atlas visit, and you know, um, it served its purpose.
So, kind of speaking about closing and stuff. So the I think the reason why I said outlaw first was towards the end of NMW. I remember the last few shows. There was a lot of talk, like Hooters became like a sponsor. I remember the last couple shows, I was like, "Oh, come to the show with Hooters girls." I think Spazman Simmons like got a connection or something like that.
Yep.
So we're all set, and I was getting the information on the next show. I still remember it because I still remember the logo I made. But there was a new Millennium Wrestling Mind Games, and it was supposed to be at the Dome, and uh it was like set to go and stuff, and then all of a sudden out of the blue it's like the show's canceled, and then everyone's like, we don't know if there's going to be a show. And then I remember people talking, okay, we're just going to do it at the school, we're just going to do the show at the school and stuff. And then there's something going on with Terry, so it's like, well, you can't call it New Millennium Wrestling, so there's going to be a one-off show at the Suplex U called Outlaw Championship Wrestling, I think it was called. um and then they were going to do that show, but then the commission blew them in and it never happened. That's really all I know about that side. Because like I said, I think there was some hubbubaloo going on that just I wasn't in enough on to get the full details. It was just supposed to be this huge show, Hooters girls, the Dome, Mind Games, and then all of a sudden, no Hooters girls, no Dome, no Mind Games. And
Yeah.
I remember talking to Sanderson about it because we were trying to like make a logo and doing all this stuff, and it was going to be outlaw wrestling or something like that. But you remember the final days of NMW?
I do roughly. I know what I had heard was that Steinmiller Associates, which was an insurance brokerage, was being investigated for insurance fraud. And Terry was the promoter and everything was in his name. And I believe either one, he had to sell or he had to give up ownership to his wife or significant other. And that was the reason why it was shutting down. And that's around the time that Mike and his first wife Jill decided to apply for a license to keep everything going. So that would have been the end of NMW, and then the beginning of you know, going into kayfabe dojo and other types of stuff at that point, and then soon turning into the NWA affiliation.
Because I think it was after that it was RPW, Rochester Pro Wrestling.
That actually was pretty much before. RPW was around at the same time. I should say
Okay.
that. Yeah, and that's when Ian Decay and or Rick Matrix were involved with RPW, and that's where like Spaz was, Brody Lee, Sweet Lou, the Delaney boys, which would have been Freddie Midnight, and a very, very young Colin Delaney. Czar. There was a couple that were, I want to say that there was about 8 people that were looking at merging with us. That was the same time of New Millennium. It wasn't one before the other, because I remember I got a call from Mike Rosario, Hellcat, saying, "Hey, I'm striking a deal with this other local group here. They're running a show. Can you come out and go to the show with me?" And I'm like, "Okay, fuck it, why not?" You know what I mean? I said, "Is this a hostile environment?" And he goes, "Some that don't know that it's going to happen and go down are not going to be happy." It felt like Shane McMahon and Bruce Pritchard showing up to WCW as the new owners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you ask Mike Rosario, he'll say, "Yeah, Chip's loved by everybody. I'm the evil one, but he's right there with me the whole time, and he doesn't ever catch any heat." I was welcomed by everybody. he wasn't necessarily. But then once everybody found out what was kind of going on, they jumped on the bandwagon quick. Um, yeah, that's the perfect timing right there, right? As New Millennium and Mike Rosario and his first wife Jill were going to start up that whole relationship with RPW is when it started.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, because there was that because I was like following after. And like I said, so like 2006 is about when I discovered 2CW and Springgate School, and that's when I started training. So between the NMW and there, like I remember like seeing like RPW, which became NWA Upstate. Um, then I think there's a place I only ran like twice, like Rock City Wrestling or something like that.
Yeah, that was another promotion that didn't last very long.
Yeah, there for like a hot second with like the Nasty
You,
Boys or something.
yeah, exactly. And I want to say, was Ian Decay associated with that? That may have been Ian Decay's that
Might
he had
have.
got a money mark to invest and do it, and then found out it was a losing battle, and then folded really quick.
Go figure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Happens
uh,
a lot. Happens a lot, right?
yeah, yeah. Because how? Because World of Hurt they closed down like a little bit after NMW, right? Because didn't they close down for a while before coming back?
Well, I got my future endeavors from World of Hurt because they were mad that I was giving more attention and time to the new millennium. And
Okay.
I was one of the originals. Like I was part owner. I put money in to start up World of Hurt. Um, so they had gotten mad because I was doing these trips up to Rochester on Fridays and Saturdays and stuff like that and missing their shows. I don't, they did what they felt that they had to do. I was getting a great put. The overall objective has always been, ever since we were at wrestling school, do whatever it takes to get yourself out there, travel the roads, make your mark in different territories, and then whenever you could bring the boys in that you were in business with, bring them in. And I had done that with some of the World of Hurt guys, like Dave DeJohn Danger and HC Loke and a bunch of everybody else. I got my they decided to get really mad at me because I was putting Rochester ahead of World of Hurt, my own base company. And I had said to him before, I'm like, instead of running on a Saturday when they're running, why don't we run on a Friday? We've run Fridays before. What's the big deal? But it was their work schedules and stuff. So like, I don't think this is going to work, Chip. I don't think this is going to work. So they gave me the money back that I had invested in, and probably did me the biggest favor because if it wasn't for Rochester and it wasn't for New Millennium, and that's where I made the biggest name for myself over the years. That gave me the best reputation that I could have ever asked for. Um, it was a blessing in disguise, thinking on hindsight about it, because, and don't get me wrong, like World of Hurt was 25 minutes away from me. It was close to where I lived and everything like that. It wasn't, as compared to 3 hours of going to Rochester, you know what I mean? You do the math, a 25-minute drive compared to a 3-hour drive, no brainer. Especially when, you're getting paid $75, but you're putting 50 between your gas tank and food in your stomach. You're bringing home 20, you know what I mean? When it's all said and done, or 25, are you real? And that was their point too at World of Hurt, was like, Chip, by the end of the day, you're only making $25 to go up to Rochester. Is it really worth it after you pay all that and everything? Like, yeah, but I'm getting used great. I'm the TV champion. I'm wrestling, mid to upper cars. I'm in a great spot. So to me, yeah, it was worth it. And it wasn't the answer that they wanted. And I didn't talk to a lot of them for a long time. Like I was the enemy, you know. I was the one where when we started the NWA affiliation, and I dealt with, Mike and Fred to open up NWA Capital and everything, and World of Hurt was still doing some stuff and basically was blowing them out of the water when we started promoting underneath my umbrella. And because I'm not sure, did you know that? Did you know that I was doing NWA Capital?
I remember like when the NWA affiliate, I remember there being NWA Upstate, then there's NWA Capital, which I talked about with Dick Justice when he was on, because that's where I first met him, was at
Yep.
the last NWA Capital show. And then there was NWA Empire in Buffalo, which I think became ESW.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I remember seeing all those, and then eventually there was a merger and it became NWA New York.
Right. Okay, so right, Empire had always been up there in the Buffalo area.
Mhm.
I had Capital, Mike had New York, but we were all kind of like working underneath the New York banner for the most part. So it's like I just basically branched off and did a territory. Is
Gotcha.
basically what it overall meant was Skull. And we were running shows and going head to head with
Oh, that name makes sense now. The Skull Crushing Promotions. Now I get it.
Skull Wrestling Promotions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's on the top
So,
of okay. Yeah, it makes sense now.
Because when Mike and Jill divorced, we got a license and we kept Rochester. It's what a lot of people don't understand. I kept Rochester alive for about 8 years.
It took me a long time to learn that. I did not know that for the longest time.
Yeah. I and then we ended up giving it to Mike Rosario because we felt it was right. And this is going many years later and everything. Grandparents had both passed away. I was looking at a lot of money and family inheritances and everything, and the liability of having the wrestling promotion license in my name at that point just wasn't good business, because why would I want to take a chance on jeopardizing $450,000 real estate and anything else to a potential lawsuit, where that's only going to benefit me as in future years, sooner than you think, which we can get into. But because there's a lot of stuff on the table right now that we're going through. Like I'm moving, you know what I mean? I'm getting out of New York. I'm going to be leaving in hopefully September and everything like that, heading down south to Florida. And which is it's okay. I'm not saying I won't ever be back and everything like that, because Shane's going to be here and everything, and that's my son. You know what I mean? And my daughter's going to be up here and everything. So we'll be back visiting and everything like that. I'll still this is kind of like where you and I had talked before about how I want you to be someone that steps up and becomes more of the locker room head at Immortal and everything like that, and being involved with way more behind the scenes stuff that's going on. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, and I won't go too far into it at this point. You can always remind me of it later, because I'm sure my speech this last weekend probably kind of proved that something was also in the plans, in regards to how I was more involved and everything like that. And but I said, where were we? So I jumped on so many different things there. Damn. We were talking about Rochester. All right, so
yeah, we're
keeping
talking about the aftermath of New Millennium, and we're kind of things sprouted there.
Right.
With, so the NWA affiliate.
Right. So I kept things going with Mike, for about maybe 7 years, and stuff, until I had received paperwork and stuff on an inheritance, and advised that it would be really in my best interest to not have a license in my name and stuff like that, for potential losing of a lot of money.
Yeah.
for liabilities and stuff. So that's when everything went to Mike, and he got another promoter's license and everything like that, and has been going ever since. He got Skull Wrestling Productions. We signed everything on over to him. Because if it wasn't for Mike and everything like that, we wouldn't have been able to do what we wanted to do. So it was good partnership, good business, someone that I trust, and that was the working relationship that we had, and like I started to say before, I owe a lot to like my career and everything to the Rochester promotion, because I was before at MW, I was out there making a name for myself and everything, but I'm gonna say within a 15-year brute time frame, 15 years, this market has gotten saturated with wrestlers to the point where every promotion's got to get ready to flip the switch. It says vacancy and no vacancy, because there's only so many spots for so many people.
Mhm.
And you know that as well as I do.
Yeah, that was like a big reason for me, like even coming out here. So it's kind of like I was gonna say, when like at the end of New Millennium, like it's really crazy of how that area, that company, those people, like how many pots those fingers got into, like how much stuff it was connected with, and how you can follow it to the places like NW Empire, New York, Capital, NEW, just all these places, and and even at the time, like I said, like in the early 2000s, I became a big indie fan because of NMW. So I was following CZW, XPW, Jersey All Pro, Jersey Championship Wrestling, and I'm seeing fucking Dunn and Marcos on Ring of Honor. I'm seeing the Outcast Killers, one of the Jersey All Pro tag titles. I'm seeing HC Loke, and like I'm seeing these guys everywhere, and it's like nuts to me. I'm like, I know those guys. I remember them, and now here they are in these big indies and stuff. And
Yeah.
like it really just like reached out, and like I knew like that was like the area for like wrestling in New York and stuff. So
Yeah.
um the whole reason why I met my wife and everything, like I was living in Oneida. I just lost my job. I was unable to find another good job to keep me wrestling and stuff. So I needed a place to crash. Super Beast was the first one to give me a couch. And I'm
I
just
love
like,
him.
yeah, Beast is the man and greatest guy ever.
Yep.
But like originally I wanted, because I wanted to take this life-changing opportunity to go to the wrestling. So I really wanted to go out to Syracuse because I'm a 2CW guy. But when Beast's like, I got a couch, I'm like, I'll go out to Rochester. I wanted to be closer to wrestling.
Hmm.
And like I knew there's all the wrestling in Rochester and stuff. So I was like, if I'm out in Rochester, I'm in where there's wrestling. I'm around all these places. I'm around all these wrestlers. Even like later on when I worked at like Planet Fitness, I would bump into everybody from like the Falcos. I would bump into Krieger, another one. The one by my house where I'd work out, I bump into Hellcat all the time. I would see before I left, fucking XPW ring crew kids would come in to work out wearing like
Yeah.
XPW shirts and stuff. So like, yeah, I really wanted to come out here to be like around all that, because like I said, it's what got me so much into the indie wrestling, and like really started me getting into the business by me starting out being the graphic web guy for this company, transition to 2CW, transition into my training, and yeah, like the Rochester area has just been a huge part for me and a lot of people, and it's really crazy if you really think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, dude, just like you still got me in the feels, dude, when you're talking about Beast and Rob Sanderson. Like, I've got nothing but fond memories of all those guys, like a young Rob Sanderson doing commentary and announcing and stuff at the New Millennium shows. I mean, he must have been 18 at the time. You know what I mean? And still a great guy. Like, he's built such a great career for himself doing commentary down south, for hockey and everything like that. Um, and there was so much talent. Like Dunn and Marcos. those guys are so good. Like they were like, can you imagine like what today or like say even 5 years ago, what it would have been like if they were in their prime 5 years ago?
Right.
They would have been on like 305 live and all that stuff, no doubt about it. Like
Hmm.
they were like 10 years too early.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Because
know what I mean?
even like with 2CW, like as a tag team, they're only there for a cup of coffee. They
Right.
didn't even get a chance to work like the Steens and Genericos or the American Wolves. They didn't get a chance to work like all those teams and stuff. And they had a lot of great matches in Ring of Honor, but like yeah, like
Yep.
shift that over a little bit more. The big matches and the big places they could have went, absolutely. And then thankfully like Cheech and all them, like they got to. But yeah, Don and Marcos, I still see stuff pop up on Twitter where somebody will be talking about something and they'll post like a GIF and there'll be some random person like, is that Dunn and Marcos? Like, hey, I remember those guys and shit. Like,
Yeah.
and thankfully I got to work Marcos a few times when he was teaming with Cheech
Yeah.
as Planet Fitness. Kevin Graham and we got to wrestle him a few times. So that was like the start of like my new millennium hit list to when I got to like finally wrestle guys from NMW.
Yeah.
Um, which was great. Which is kind of what I was saying when I wrestled Loke last weekend. I was just
Yep.
like, I was there when he came back to Ukrainian Club and he beats Marcos for the cruiserweight title.
Yep.
And it's just crazy that like I was there watching that, and now all these years later, I'm wrestling them in Utica, New York, half hour from my town, and
Yep.
it's nuts, it's crazy, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
a lot of great guys came out of the area.
Like, you know, aside from like Dunn and Marcos, like Jimmy Olsen and Colin,
Mhm.
so good. So good. You know what I mean? And like 5 years too early. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Show me a better worker than Cloudy on the New York independent scene, 'cause I don't think there is one. I mean, Ando is phenomenal too, but I'm huge on Cloudy because he's just so good. And like I remember seeing a lot in like Cloudy that I saw in like Kevin Dunn and Marcos back in the day, like just so good. And like they had the right opportunities at the right time. I mean, they sacrificed a lot for Ring of Honor. I think, those guys, and same thing with Logan DeVito. Don't get me wrong. Everybody sacrifices, but, you know, practically killing themselves for the entertainment of the Ring of Honor startup. They really did, and it was just like, Loke, to his credit, he looked after those guys and gave them opportunities, which is what people that are in our position are supposed to do. And it's like it's not always about us. It's got to be what's good for the business and what's good for people that are going to make people talk and everything. Like, you know, do you want me to get into like last week with you
Yeah,
about you? Can
yeah,
I talk can I talk business?
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so it's probably no secret that I'm involved with like backstage helping out, producing and agenting at Immortal Wrestling. Okay, talk to Mike King. He's like, I want you to sit in on the assignments and everything like that. Because we were just playing with the ideas about wrestlers being involved with booking. You know what I mean? And you know, we wanted that like tunnel vision of looking through everything, what's good for everything. So I was with Mike and Nick last week when we came up with the car when the card was made up about what was going to happen on the show. I was asked, I don't think Mike would mind this at all. I was asked about you and Loke. What do you want to do in this match? It's no secret. Loke, I love that guy. Like
Mhm.
he's one of my guys. I've been there with him since wrestling school and you know his most recent wedding and everything like that. I said to Mike and Nick, I'm like, Brew needs to win this match, and they looked at me and they said, "Why? Just tell us why." And I said, coming off the match from last time here against Madman Fulton, Loke's going to give him a great showing tonight. Brute needs his comeuppance again. You're going to be running this territory. He's your biggest guy. He's got to go over tonight for his worth and everything without hesitation. Sounds good. I like the way that you're thinking. So, in hindsight, and you didn't, tell me if I'm wrong. You did not know anything about that.
No.
Correct? Prior to right now?
Yeah.
You didn't know anything about it. Okay.
Nope, nothing.
But you've been around long enough to know for what I just said. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
So what the companies need is someone that's going to sit there and say, hey, Brute just came off of a huge match with Madman Fulton. You guys sitting in chairs smacking the taste right out of one another. Like, thank you, mister. Can I have another? You know what I mean? It's like, holy shit. You know what I mean? It's just, and then Low coming in, with a certain, with another form of hardcore mentality as far as going outside of the ring and playing with you and doing stuff. I'm like, no, the way that we build a locker room and the way that we do things, and it was no different than what I did with my son and Sarah and Rain. You know what I mean? No one, both guys are coming off of a loss and they need, Shane and Sarah and Rain in their match, they were like the wrestling match of the first half of the show. And you look at what all the other matches were on the first half, everyone was different and had its own little catch to it. And they were the wrestling match. And you know what? The finish should be this under these circumstances. And they both had a great showing. Same thing with you and Loke. And you both have been very vocal about that in regards to how you felt about the match and different things like that you wanted out of it. And you're a stable member of that locker room. Loke passes through.
Yeah.
So at our age in our area, we're elevators. Our job is to elevate people. And he would admit the same thing. You know what I mean? Sure, a shine is great and everything like that. And the push is always appreciated, but for the position that we're in, it's not about that great big huge push and everything like that. And that's why I said, Brute should win this match because he needs his comeuppance after the last match, and it builds his stock right back to where it should be for rolling out into 2023. And
right.
Like I said, without hesitation, Mike was just like, you're right. I agree with you. Highlight it. Boom. Highlighted. So my goal is to be more or less like that neutral voice of trying to get them to think about what's going on, because there was, Megabyte Ronnie canceled because of the snow in Buffalo. There was a talk, there was thought about putting Vince Valor in your guys' match and making it a 3-way.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. But I made a comment to Mike. I said, Mike, your main event with Bill Collier, Dango, and Skyros is already a 3-way dance. Makes no sense. If you do another 3-way, what makes that match so special? And he goes, oh, shit, you're right. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, we just, let's just pray that a wrestler shows up with somebody that's not booked. Let's just, and this is Vince's debut and everything, him coming in as a heel, which we need. And I wanted you guys to be separate. Keep that as a singles one-on-one match. Vince can go into a different thing, and it's still the same number that's on the card on the paper that they pre-made up and everything. So no harm, no foul. It didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
But it just that one little voice, like, why are we going to do 2 3-ways? We got to have this special main event match for the belt as a 3-way. We don't need another 3-way. It doesn't make any sense. It's not going to make, it's going to take away from it, because, you can only do so many of that type of specialty stuff. So, that's what my goal is now, is to be that person in the back that has the ability to voice an opinion in the right way and have the promoter and booker listen to me and say, yeah, you know what? You're right. That doesn't make sense. We really need to like consider this, all within keeping a budget and a timeline. So, sorry to use this way to kind of like tell you what I had in store for you, but
That's fine.
Roberto knew.
I mean,
Ro- Ro-
I definitely appreciate it. Appreciate you having
yeah,
my back and everything.
yeah, and that's you'd be surprised. Like, so you just found out this tonight, but you could prove my theory because you know who knew about this?
No?
Holiday.
Oh, did he?
He heard about it on the way home because he rode up with me.
hmm
So there's no way that I can make this up. This conversation took place with him last week.
All
Not
right.
that you wouldn't believe. Not saying that you wouldn't believe me,
No,
but
I believe you. I believe you.
it's it's it's
100%.
it's just it's just what's right is right, and
Yep.
I want good product. I want good shows because that's how we build a house. That's how we get more money in people's pockets. Right now we're working on. I'm going to be spearheading the streaming deal and everything like that. So hope going into 2023, the goal is that we're going to start being able to draw more income with the streaming rights and everything like that. So I'm working into a deal with Mike and his son in regards to streaming the events on Fight and or IWTV that we can actually earn memberships and everything back. So we have a good 2023 strategic plan coming out. And it's pretty cool that they're coming to me and giving me the opportunity to get involved with stuff like that. So, there's a lot of good things I think on the horizon, with the company, and that's kind of like, Brute, the point that where I'm at right now is just like, you know, um, trying to, if I have the ability to make things better and to have the reputation that I everybody says that I have, for doing the right thing and trying to, work around and help make things better. That's what I want to do. That's where I'm enjoying myself. When
Yep.
I got into the business and trained the guy that trained me, you know, very grateful to this day for TC. And he said to me, he goes, the only thank yous I need is, please do the same thing for other people. If you get yourself in a position to be able to help people that have something to contribute, do it. That's where the business continues and, strives and everything like that. That's all the thanks that I need is just, play it forward and do it for somebody else like I did for you. All right, cool. So, I mean, that's kind of like what I've been doing for the last, it seems like 10 years roughly, is just, taking people like yourself and other people that are on rosters, like, like a Garrett Holiday and everything, and becoming advocates and or, you know, companies that we're working for coming up with strategic concepts that are going to make everybody even more valuable and give out good product, moving forward. um I've seen a lot of stuff over the last 26 years and everything, and um I'm not one of those guys that has a hit. I don't have a hidden agenda because my career's wrapping up per se, as far as in ring. So, um, you know, for me, it's kind of like, wow, if I can help roll out a product, um, let me ask you one question.
hmm
A year and a half ago, 2 years ago from now, you were a member of the Immortal locker room, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Whether it was Canajoharie, St. Johnsville, Rome, or anything like that, what was the average attendance on those shows? I'm hearing like 100 to 125. Is that almost an accurate number?
Uh, yeah. I'm gonna say yes because pre-pandemic era, uh, there was always really good houses. King is one of the guys who moves around,
Hmm.
hit these places and stuff, and it seemed like there was always a really good draw, a lot of good seats, especially. Um, Sometimes I have a hard time keeping keep track of them. But whenever we ran St. Johnsville, the Wolf Pack Arena has like the
Mhm.
wolf and it's red and black and stuff. That's always
Yep.
pretty good. And like I was saying earlier, when I was talking about that Halloween Havoc one, and I think Garrett said it was Ken Jahari, like that wasn't as good of a draw as his other ones, and that was the first time I saw King being really like upset and down, being like, well, this wasn't the draw I needed or expecting or whatnot. And yeah, I would say going back to this point a year and a half, 2 years ago, that's when the town started taking a hit, and they're around, yeah, like 150-ish, maybe a little below, sometimes they're a little bit better. um the one show after that, when I wrestled, I can't remember his name now. I call him Blade, the big tall dude in the vampire jacket. Um, we're in Garrett. Help me out with this one. This is the gold one. We've been there a few times. It was like the yeah, Trent something. Wherever that was, Sean Carr wrestled popping on the main event. That was a pretty good draw that night. But yeah, I would say since the last year and a half, 2 years, 150-ish, something like that.
All right. So if you going off of that, okay, in the last year and 3 months since I've been around, I've seen, with the exception of the Rensselaer show, which was a total flop because I was really out of the market, demographic market, the regular fan base drawing for an Immortal show is minimum 250
Mhm.
between Kenajahari, Rome, and Utica. 250 and up. Do you realize that in the last year and 3 months, the base occupancy for fans in attendance went from an average 150 to 215 to 250 and up.
I can see that because the last couple Rome shows were really good, and the last couple Utica shows were really good.
Right. Right. So Mike is getting even more and more innovative and getting more and more ideas, whether it was from Ben and or myself and stuff like that,
Mhm.
on different aspects. And like, I think all in all, this past show that we had last week, from top to bottom, was entertainment value, one of the better shows of the year.
Yeah, and what I can say about that is I just saw Garrett and McCormick's mention this was um McCormick said they really liked what happened with Garrett and Nick.
Hmm.
And I was in the back. I was like talking to Garrett about everything, and I was expecting one thing and something else. But when I heard what was happening, my first thought was just like, that doesn't seem like enough substance for what's going on. So in my head, I was like, but then once I saw it executed, I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. I get it now. And then once I saw the second part and then the third part, I'm like, I got it, and it's different. And then it was a different beat to the show
Yep.
because like going back to, I absolutely love putting shit together and like trying to book like a few years ago I tried running school shows in Syracuse for Newton. I called it New Pro Wrestling. I did a few like school shows and stuff, and I would bring students from, Rochester, Binghamton, Syracuse, Utica, whoever I could, bring them together, and we just put on these shows. I put them on YouTube, and every match had its purpose on the show and within the match, because I was like, okay, so you guys are wrestling on this match. I want you to get over this one thing. And if it was like Jake and Kit, I was like, Kit wants to shake Jake's hand. Jake won't shake his hand. So get that over. You're doing this in the promo, and then next month this is happening, and you're going to try to get that handshake. So
Yep.
everything did was around that handshake. Every
Hmm.
promo they did was around that handshake. And I did that
Yep.
with every match because I wanted each match to, one, be different, two, have the story to follow, and three, lead to somewhere.
Hmm.
And no knock on the last year and a half, 2 years, but I can tell you that from a wrestling standpoint in the back, I did feel there was some stagnancy almost, where the shows weren't very different from the last one. You know what I mean? The way it ran and all this stuff. But I did feel the last Utica show was different. There was less clusters. The card was thinned out. Everybody had a job and a role. Like you said, you protected the triple threat main event. You had the wrestling, you had the brawling, you had the schmaz hardcore stuff. Like it was all there. And I mean, this wasn't a knock on you because she was already booked, but much to Summer Rae's dismay, the only thing missing was a women's match because
Right.
she was hoping to see some women, but
Yeah.
she was already booked. So that was really it. Like if you just had a women's match in there, or you act like it's the 50s and you booked micro pro wrestling match or something,
Right. Right.
you guys had it was different, it was everything. And I always say to everybody, because me, 6'5", 400 plus pounds, I'm an advocate for hoss matches, for brawling, for big guys, but I know there's a spot on the show for the little dudes because pro wrestling is a three-ring circus. If you
Yep.
don't like the strongman, you're going to stick around for the trapeze artist.
Right.
And I feel
Yep.
like that's a good mindset. And last show was a very good indicator of that to me.
Right. 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 There's a purpose for everything, all different aspects on every show. You know what I mean? And that's
Mhm.
what that last show had. And and to me that speaks volumes, because we could sit back and say, you know, you know, hey, Mike King, look at the end results. I mean, granted, the amount of startup that it takes to revenue, to actually hold a show in New York State.
Yeah.
Truth be told, he got screwed over by Herkimer College, because that was an event that was made for Herkimer College, and he got screwed over on that by them. So he was pot committed for Summer Rae anyway. So he got, he made the most of it, knowing that very well could be on a losing battle for what the overhead would be and everything. And to his credit, I would have felt bad if he canceled it, because money is money and it's coming out of his pocket. He stepped up and did something. Then like you said, you were talking about Nick Sullivan and Garrett Holiday.
Mhm.
Do you know whose idea it was to send them back out?
Yours?
No.
Ben?
Mike
Oh,
Rosario.
Mike. Oh,
He was reading the crowd, and I had asked him anyway too, to like keep an eye on Garrett and everything like that, because you know I feel that he's got a lot of talent and stuff to offer and everything, and you know um and he said he would and everything like that. And then when he saw the reaction in the crowd, let them fight, and how much they wanted him to go at it and everything, and the pull apart happened, and then the dive, and you know brawl, and then get to the back and everything. That was Mike Rosario's call. You know he jumped right, and Garrett would chime in and say the same thing, as like, this is not over. Like, you listen to him. Listen to him. You haven't been out there, either one of you guys, for 10 minutes, and they're still hot for it. They're hyped up. After this match, you're going back out. And I'm like, Mike, and I went and grabbed Mike King. I'm like, listen, you know what? We're going to send them back out, because that was one of the hottest spots that blew up the show that night. We're going to send them back out
mhm.
for another segment on it. And okay, he's listening to our ideas and everything, and then when we sent him back out again, the crowd jumped right back on it again. We just brought him from here to here, back up to here. You
Yeah.
know as well as I do, our job is to play with people's emotions when we're
Yep.
storytelling. You
Yep.
know what I mean? And
And
if you go ahead.
I was gonna say, when I was in the back talking to Loke, at that point we were like laughing at each other because after the bunkhouse brawl with all the plunder and stuff, because it was intermission than us, and
Yep.
Loke's just like, oh, well, this is a fun one to follow, and I was like, yeah, so I'm gonna light you on fire and I'm gonna shoot you, and then we're gonna go from there, and so we were kind of mentioning about the match earlier about like the Loke and me and the brawling and the style and stuff. um I've been telling people for the last couple of years that I have like I feel like I've reached my Terry Funk Cactus Jack phase of my career. Before the pandemic I was doing cartwheels and nip ups and doing all this stuff, and that's not me. I'm more of the brawler that, like you were saying, me and Fulton just slapping the taste out of each other. Like that
Mhm.
was one of the most meatiest, hard hitting matches I've had since probably since Japan. Like there has not been a lot of a match start to finish. It was just us going, and I wanted to bring that in with Loke. I wanted to go on the outside. I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to up until I saw the announcement, I was legit just gonna be like, let's just do a bunkhouse brawl like I did with Ben Hameen. But then you announced a bunkhouse brawl. So I was like, how are we still gonna do this? Because they just saw, you know, tables and doors and chairs. Now we got to get them to react by using what's on the outside, like they're from here, but I'm trying to do something that's here. But we still
Right.
went out there, did something in the same vein, got over my bruiser, brawler, kick your ass, Lokes, extreme, ROH, and all that stuff. We did it within the confines, and it still got over, and they were still really into it. And because
Mhm.
I even looked at them, and when the crowd was chanting ECW during the bunkhouse brawl, I just looked at him. I go, "You're the guy from ECW. Like they're already chanting it. How are we gonna get him to chant it again?" But we did,
Right. Right.
and so like I was
They
actually
wanted it.
nervous about it. Yeah,
They
they
wanted it.
they did. Like that's when like I kind of knew like it was almost like a different beast at that point because I even said I go, when the hell was there ever an IC dub chant? I've never
Right.
heard IC dub chanted at a show before. And I heard it like 4 different matches. And
Yep.
and granted, the show before, when Sandman came out for the Ballroom Brawl, I was looking over the curtain or the tarp because I was
Mhm.
loving hearing Enter Sandman and watching him fucking swing the cane. I
Yeah.
wish he wasn't wearing a grandpa sweater. I wish he had a
Yeah.
t-shirt on. So I could have been more immersed into it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was just really cool seeing like it's almost like Immortal got an edge in Utica, and I really like it because that's what I'm about. I really love that shit. So,
Yeah.
I was afraid, but then Loke and I went out there and let loose, and oh my god, m- most of that match was just going, just
Yeah.
doing, reacting, and I don't get to do that. I'm
Yeah.
never with a guy I trust, I'm comfortable with, I know we're on the same page, and he was reacting to me, I was reacting to him, we're reacting to the crowd, and it was just all there, and I was loving it. Everyone got over, everyone was looking great, and it was just I was so happy. Like,
Yep.
I told my wife, I was like, "Not only am I feeling good," I was like, "I'm ready to wake up in the morning and go to the gym." Like, I'm all pumped up and motivated, like, it was such a good feeling. So,
And I
yeah,
and
it was all
and
that was
here's
just awesome.
that was something that Garrett and I talked about too on the way home. I'm like, did you see Brew tonight? And he's like, yeah, dude. He was like on cloud nine, like feeling great. I said, yeah, yeah,
It's been
yeah,
a while. I've been
right,
so down on myself in so many matches because they haven't been clicking, they haven't been hitting with the fans, I haven't been able to do what like I want to do. I
yeah,
mean, like the style I want to do and stuff. But these last 2 matches, I got to do it, and I talked to King before I left, and he's just like, "We'll book more of this next time," and I'm like, "Please do." Because I am living for this shit, and this is like the greatest I've felt in a long time. I
and,
was like, it's
and you know
I
what,
love it.
dude? If I had a wish to give you like one dream opponent, you versus Terry Bam Bam Gordy.
Oh.
As far as two heaters
Yeah,
getting in there and going at it, that would be phenomenal. You know what I mean?
Terry
If you put
Gladiator.
you and Terry, yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as like a big man or like and I say this like you know, and you'll know, going to be partial and everything, but like if Brody was still alive and he was on the Indies, could you imagine the business that you could do with John
So
now?
here's
Now,
a heartbreaker. Here's the heartbreaker. Um, Brody was my last end all be all. I remember in Binghamton, I was sitting on the stage watching Brody's um match before he announced he got signed. And it was the match where everybody was just doing dives. Like people are coming from the locker room. There was like 30 dives in a row. And I was on the stage watching, and I was up there with Lovins, and he goes, why don't you go down there? Why don't you do it? Like, go out there and do it. And I was like, nope. Brody had a pen and paper. He asked people to do it. He didn't ask me. I'm not doing it. I don't want to make him angry because he didn't ask me to do it. So all these people are going, and then Lovins goes, like he got signed. And I was like, what? Because I was only a couple years in. I was green as shit. I wouldn't have been ready to wrestle Brody, but he was the guy I wanted to get to be able to wrestle.
Yep.
And so he got signed, he left, and all that. And I guess fun story about that is after his match, he was in the locker room. He sits down a table across from me. He looks at me. He goes, "Pun, where the hell were you? Why didn't you come out and do a dive?" And I was like, "Shit."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I always wanted to work them, and I was telling this to the guys up in C4 when I started working there. I used to watch a Brody match from C4 over and over and over, like 5 times a day, every day, and I'd watch every Brody match because I would watch how Brody would do big man shit in a super indie way. Like, how did he do it to get that pop when all he's doing is a big boot or a side slam or a choke slam or
Yep.
something? Like, how does he do it?
Yep.
So when Brody got his release and all that, I was just like, at the time, because 270 was already gone, I was like, I'll never get this match, but God, do I want it.
Yeah.
So the whole reason, the main reason why the 270 reunion started happening was Brody wanted it because Brody wasn't there when it ended. Brody's available. He wanted to come in and do it. And
Uh-huh.
obviously, unfortunately, that didn't happen because of the pandemic. Um,
Right.
but I was talking to somebody, and I don't know like how close this was to happening, but I was told that night well night 2 when we're in Syracuse that there is something talking around where they're going to do a battle royal and the winner would face Sammy Callahan for the 2CW title. Maybe it was the first night, and then the second night they would wrestle him. And he said I was going to come out, I was going to raise hell, I was going to toss all these people out, I would be announced as the winner, but then it'd be like, oh no, there's one more person left, and out would come Brody, and we'd run a few spots, and then he would eliminate me, and that was
Yeah.
going to be my chance to wrestle Brody and my one and only. And I like heard that, and my heart broke even more, and I don't know if it would have happened, but just the fact that somebody somewhere said that, that was like the greatest fucking thing to me ever.
Well, here's the thing though, Brew. If Josh was involved with it, all right. So there's the wrestling family, then there's other family. I was lucky, and I'm lucky enough to be very, very close to the family. To this day, I'm going to be with Amanda and the boys for Christmas this year. My wife, Sean, my son, and I are going to be in Orlando, Florida, this upcoming Christmas. Like in 3 weeks, I'm going to be with them. So there's even when John was here and everything, I was in Orlando. So I was one of the few that was very, very close to the family because we are family, and I love them to death. I had a great relationship. Like when John would be on the road wrestling, I would go with Shane, and we would coach little Brody in youth wrestling and like be involved with the family and do different things. So we were. I mean, Shane was very, very close to John and Amanda to this day. He just you know, um, John followed a lot of Shane's high school wrestling career because as my son, had a excellent amateur wrestling background, and John followed it. Like John would send me messages. Are you going? Does Shane have a match tonight? Are you going live? Okay, I'm going to be watching it. And John would follow Shane. I got a video on my phone right now of Shane. He spent a week down there with John after he was rehabbing his leg with WWE, and went down for a week and was working out with John at CrossFit in Tampa, and just pecking his brain and everything. Here he's 16, 17, soon to be 17-year-old kid hanging out with his big brother, and talking about crowd response and match calling. Because Shane knew at that point he was going to get into the business and everything, just like talking shop like we're doing right now, like situational. And John loved him. And one of the reasons that we're also going to Florida is we're going to be closer to where Amanda and the boys are. Because I have they call me Uncle Chip. Like I was John's Uncle Chip. Amanda calls me Uncle Chip. Brody and Nolan call me Uncle Chip. Like they're my kids. And when Amanda flew in for AEW in Albany and everything, I picked her up from the airport. My wife and I took her out to dinner because we're family. It's like, we got to spend time together and talk and, go over like what the boys have going on and stuff like that. Like, but John, without a doubt, was made for the business. I mean, it breaks my heart every day. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about him. We would, John and Amanda would have these events called Huberfest at their house up in Rochester and Webster. My family and I are very lucky enough to be invited and to go to them and everything like that. I got very, very close to John's mom. And, this was not long after the point of when John requested his release. And I was talking to his mom and his uncle and his aunt. And, I'm sitting down talking to the three of them because they had a lot of concerns about John wanting to leave the WWE and, test the waters elsewhere and see what was else out there. And I talked to his mom and I said, listen, Nancy, your son is not a dummy. He knows what he's doing. He knows his worth. He knows what he can do. He knows where it could be at. If I was you, I would have a lot of faith in your son because he's going to make the best decision that he could possibly make, and he's going to land on his feet. He's got a great name value for himself. It's only natural for you to be worried about him. And meanwhile, John's playing a game and he's looking over and he sees me talking to his mom, and he knows because he had just gotten done with all these conversations. And, his mom got up, walked over to him and gave him a hug and said, I just got done talking to Uncle Chip. He pretty much set me straight with where you are and everything like that. So he gave him a hug and said, sorry for worrying about it and everything like that. You know what you're doing. And John was just like, oh, thank you. It's like, because he'll never hear the end of it,
Yeah.
And he didn't ask. I didn't even know. I popped a squat and said hi to Nancy and his aunt and uncle and just started shooting. And she came right out with it. She said, what do you think? What do you think? I'm just like, your son's no dummy. He knows what he's doing. He just he knows the business. He knows what he can do. He knows where he's got to be and everything. You got to get him way more credit than maybe what you're giving him right now because he knows what he's doing. So he'd make one hell of a name for himself every weekend and make the same amount of money. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, she goes, I don't know this stuff. I just, I'm so worried about him. And like, he knows what he's doing, man. Trust me. And she went right over there and hugged him. And I'm just like, and he was just like, that was a huge weight off of his shoulders. I don't know if he ever felt that he was in debt to me for that alone. Just that he was able to dodge that bullet from his mom because he him and his brother, they lost their father at a very young age and everything. So, Brody and his brother had to be the men of the house and everything, for their mom. So, it was good. Like, he felt he was appreciated for what I did, but I just told the truth about it. You know what I mean? It was without hesitation. My heart breaks for those two boys every day. He loved his kids and he loved the business and he loved his wife and, for him to go through what he went through was just awful. But the legacy that he left is just amazing. And to this day, like you talk about 2CW and his early beginnings, and even ESW and everything like that. Like, just amazing, amazing, name that he made for himself. And just, you know, imagine if you could get that blow up match with him. It would be money. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, you would need it to get made, but it would just be like, it would be a box office draw. And the same thing like I talk about with Terry Gordy, same thing. You know, you say triple threat match, you, Terry Gordy, and Brody Lee in a triple threat match. Could you imagine the potatoes?
Yeah,
The potatoes that would be.
I,
Oh,
I was gonna say, man, you'd hear a lot of thudding, and then Brody just boot everybody in the face.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, but it just, I mean, that's long story short, you're talking about, Immortal and other places like that. That's a lot of our goals moving forward and everything like that. I know I fast forwarded, I hit the button on Immortal and everything. I apologize, but
No, we were
yeah.
just about to get there. We were just about to
Okay.
get there anyway, so you didn't skip too much far ahead. Because we're kind of talking about like the show and all that, and like uh because I was gonna bring up like um this is even going back when you're talking about like Colin and Jimmy and stuff, because early on they gave me a lot of advice when Graham and I did a few tag matches with them. And
Yeah.
I think I said this last week or the week before, but there is one piece of advice that Colin gave me really early on after a show we were talking, and he just goes, whenever it's time to put together a match, he goes, before I ask about any moves, any spots, he goes, I always ask, what's the story you want to tell? What are the story that we're telling? And from that day on, before I talk to anybody, I'm always just like, well, what story do you want to tell out there? Or this is the story that I had in my head that I wanted to tell.
Hmm.
So if I'm just like, okay, so we're gonna do this thing where I'm the big guy, the small guy, and like I'm gonna try to break your back, but I can't break your spirit. So we're gonna do this, or we're gonna get over this part of you, so you're gonna do this or whatever. And that always stuck with me. And at this, the other thing is, um, it's always, where do we go from here? And I usually ask the person in charge, like, because I think I asked this the King for Loke, and I'm just like, is there anything specific? Or I think it was you. I'm pretty sure it was you, because you're like, up, and I was like, well, is there anything you need, anything specific? And you just said no, get your heat back. Because I want to know, like, oh, the finish has to be like this, because next show we're doing this or whatever. So it's always very, what's next, where are we going, so that I know what's going on this month, where we're going, to make it make sense. Now sometimes people will tell you, not very often, and other times it kind of goes. But like how you were saying, saying this or saying that, it's very much like, well, we got to do this because we still have to go here, you know and that's kind of like a very important role that you have in the company
Hmm.
that not a lot of people would really know, understand, or even appreciate, because they don't know what happens.
Right. 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 And I remember that conversation with you. We were in the alleyway
Yep.
going out to behind the curtain and everything like that. You looked at me, I looked at you, and I pointed to you. I'm like, you, and you're like, anything special? And I might, like, I wanted you to get your power
Mhm.
back, your star power back, and everything like that. It was essential in that match. And I mean, you over clean. Loke's a legend out there and has the experience factor that he knows what he has to do to um tell a story and taking bumps and everything and you know getting a good shine and a good comeback. You guys, you didn't need a script. You've been around long enough to know what you have to do to get yourself over, and your dance partner that's willing to do it for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It-
I was telling my wife this, and after the show when we are talking, if you go back and watch me versus Loke, I came out first, and I'm doing my thing. And because I'm like a big Raven fan and all this stuff, like I kind of sit in the corner now.
No,
Yeah, I know, right? I wrestled them once. I don't know if you know this, but I did wrestle
I
them
did.
once.
I do know that.
Yeah, so now like this thing that I do when I'm waiting for the other person is I'll go in the corner and I'll like sink into it. I'll put my arms on the rope and I'm just kind of like sitting there. My mentality is I'm like the dude sitting in the saloon, sitting in the chair, eyeballing you. It's not a lie, Carrie. It's not a lie. I did. I wrestled them once.
That's right.
So yeah, so I'm sitting there just me mugging them, and then I wait for the time so I can like stand up real big and come in the middle. So there's that look of me getting big right before the bell. So I'm in the corner, my arms on the thing, I'm just sitting there, and Derek pops up. So he's right next to me. We're talking. He was saying something stupid like he always does to make me laugh, and so I'm sitting there, I'm saying something to him. I see because Low comes in, he goes up on the top turnbuckle and he does this weird move where it looks like he's about to fall forward. And Derek's like, oh my God, I thought he was going to fall off and he'd kill himself. And I'm looking at him like, yeah. So we're talking. Low comes in, and out of the side of my periph, I just see something and I turn, and Loke is hauling ass right at me and pops me right in the face and starts the match.
No
That
shit.
wasn't supposed to happen. We're just like, all right, the match will start. You come up, you hit me, I'll hit you. We'll do this. And we'll do... Nope. Looks like I'm gonna go punch him now. It's just
And if it felt right,
it felt
if it
right and it
felt
worked.
right,
I was there for it, but
yeah,
it woke me right up too because my arms are out here and I just turned and wham.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's
But
what I
but
like, man. You just like I said, you react. It was great.
but like we talked about, he knows what he has to do.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He felt it. He read the audience and everything like that, and he just knew that he had to act on it. You know, but it takes two
Yep.
to pull it off. Because
Yeah.
if your sell on that is half-assed, they're not going to believe.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They're not going to believe, and that's why are we doing what we're doing?
Yep.
Suspicion of disbelief. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's
because
like,
in the same vein, later we're outside, and I just did a thing where I took the steel steps. I run up to the curtain. I'm doing my brute train whistle, and I'm
yep,
going to run at Loke, who I put up against the steel steps. Loke moves out of the way. He drop toe holds me. I go gut first into the steps. Derek
yep.
comes up to me, tries to get me to pop again. He goes, "What the hell, brute? You wrestled Raven once. You should have saw that coming." And I was like,
Phenomenal.
yep. I was like, you're right. I should have. So I'm sitting there. I'm like holding my stomach because I just went right into the guardrail or the step, and I turn around, and I like Loke pulls me. I turn around, and all of a sudden, just something hits me in the face, and all I see is brown and yellow, and I realize that Loke just misted something in my face from a cup he got in the crowd, and
Ooh.
it smelled really weird, and it was brown, and I'm just going because it's getting in my mouth, and I'm like, oh my god, what the hell, what the hell? So I'm like running away from him, and I'm just going, oh, it's a beer, thank God.
Oh,
Yeah. So he stole someone's beer, put it in his mouth, and misted me with it. But for like a good 5 seconds, I thought it was spit from Chew
I
because it
was
was
gonna
a
say tobacco juice.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it was brown and it had like a very like oaky smell to it. But then I was trying to get it out of my mouth, and then I realized it was beer. And Derek has the hired gun ink towel, and he's just like, "I'm gonna wipe it. I'm gonna." No, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna wipe it off. I don't know what it is. So I'm just like
Could
rubbing my face.
could you imagine if like it was 10 years ago and Derek was doing his old gimmick, how over he would fucking be right now?
So I forgive me for everybody in the chat who heard me tell the story last week or something like that. But when Derek became my manager, he wanted to come back in. He was retired. He was done wrestling, but he wanted to stay in the business and he wanted to manage.
Right.
He did a couple one-offs where he managed me and Kevin in Dynasty when we're the tag champions. But then Kevin retired, and then he started coming with me. So when he came in, that's when I was doing the Messiah of old school gimmick, which was very like religious, but with like classic Jim Cornette wrestling, whatever. So he
Yep.
came in, all he knew was he wanted to do his voice that sounded like the Joker, Mark Hamill Joker from Batman the Animated Series. That's all he had.
Yeah.
So he came in with a suit and tie, and we're like, well, what are we going to call you? What are we going to do? And we settled on Father Derek because I was a Messiah of old school. So he came in and he was doing all that shit and he got super over. Now I started working Canada like a few months later for IWS in Montreal and C4 in Ottawa.
Yep.
And I, for some reason, I'm super over in Canada. Canada fucking loved me. They just love like what I was doing. Like I did a splash off the top rope, and you would think I just did a 450. Like I love Canada, so I was
Yep.
super over and stuff. And I tell him, I go, hey, I got this manager. He's super good at getting heat. I go, he's so good. Like, can I bring him in? And both places are like, no, we really don't like managers. We don't want any managers. We don't like them. They get in the way. And
Hmm.
I was like, no, you don't understand. I go, he's really good. I go, I know for a fact he gets up here, he's gonna get over. And so eventually, C4, I talked to the promoter, and he was just like, well, is it really that important to you if he came in? And I was like, look, this man helped train me. He helped me get to Japan. He was there for me and a lot of personal stuff in my life. I go, I love him and I owe him the moon. And all he wants to do is manage. And we do local indies that draw, maybe 100, maybe 200. I go, he has not got to wrestle in front of 500, 600 diehard Canadian fans who are just vocal, drunk, and, loving wrestling. So the
Yep.
guy goes, okay, you can bring him in. So I bring him in to both C4 and IWS. I bring him to C4. I'm feuding with Space Monkey. I bring him into
Solid.
IWS. Yep, great guy. And at IWS, I'm wrestling for the IWS World Heavyweight title against Bucks Belmar.
Okay.
Derek comes in, he does his thing. We go to the back. The promoters, both times, both companies pull us aside. They come up to us and they both say the same exact fucking thing. Oh my
He's great.
God. He was really over. He was really good. They wanted to kill him. And Derek's just in the back smiling. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I told you. I
Uh-huh.
told you. And you know what? That's not even the only time that happened. Uh, last year, I got booked for PWR in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I talked to the guy and I go, "Hey, I have a manager. He typically comes with me. This is what he does." And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." We get down there. Derek's sitting next to me. What I didn't know was there's like four people in charge, and I talked to one guy who booked me, and that one guy did not tell anybody else.
E.
Now, the two of the other guys were like, okay, cool. The fourth guy lost his fucking mind. He was pissed. Who is this
Yeah.
guy? Why is he in my locker room? Why did he bring him and not tell me? Dude was pissed.
Yeah.
So we're in Gorilla. Now, Super Beast was there. We rolled with him. He did a deal where he was paying me as a hired gun to like beat up the world champion or whatever. So we're in the back. Now, the guy was quoted as saying, I don't know who that man is, and I am not happy that he's here. Like, specifically said that. Don't know who he is, don't know why he's here. I'm not happy about it.
Huh.
So we're in back, we're in Gorilla. Beast is even assuring him. He's like, he's gonna be fine. I guarantee it. So we're in the back. The guy makes some backhanded comment to us before we go through the curtain. We go through the curtain, we do the match, we come back. The guy goes up to Derek and he goes, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You were great. And like shakes his hand. And Derek's
Yeah.
just like, oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Derek, yeah,
Without passing judgment. You know what I mean? But
yep,
see, here's the thing though. That's the beauty of wrestling. Like Derek is smart enough to know where he's got to be and what he's going to do to
yes.
not take any heat away from what you're doing.
Hmm.
And it's a complimenting each other, and not and here's the problem. I mean, obviously that guy that had a problem with it probably had a bad taste from somebody else that went into
Uh-huh.
business for himself and was automatically assuming that Derek was going to do the same thing.
Hmm. Garrett made another great point. He was saying, not once but twice, Derek managed me, and we bumped Derek in two separate matches, and the explosion was epic. And that's another thing. Derek and me as a heel has happened a whole bunch, especially with Monkey and Belmar. We built up to it, and he would take his Harley race bump when he's on the apron. They'd bip him. He'd go flying. He'd bump off the apron and fall off. Biggest pop you hear of the night, man. When he got his comeuppance, always the loudest. And Derek
Yep.
knows how to get the heat and how to build to that spot and how to make it count, and it always works.
Yeah.
Always works.
It's
And
it. Yeah. Yeah. He knows what he's doing.
Mhm.
That's and that's like I said to you, the guy must not have known that he knew how to work and
Probably not.
what was needed. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and it's just but
It's
automatically, like, it's kind of a shit though thing that he would actually automatically do that without actually even like getting to know Derek first.
yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not like I just brought him because he heard him yelling and he just goes, "Well, who'd you talk to?" And I told him. He goes, "Well, did you tell him about Derek?" I go, "I did." He goes, "Do you have that message to pull it up?" And I go, "Yeah, it's right here." And I showed him. And it's not my fault that this dude wasn't told.
Right.
I was booked. I said, "I have a manager. He comes with me. This is his name. This is what he does. Is this okay?" And the guy's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And you know, I know that the manager thing is very few and far between. You don't see a lot of managers, and unfortunately, a lot of them that you do are usually somebody's friend or somebody's girlfriend who just wants to do it. So
Yep.
they get pulled in. And I'm not going to name names, but we're in a match one time where Derek Garrett, I think this is a tag match. It was you and me. We're on one side with Derek, and we're facing another team with a manager, and that manager didn't do anything. I mean, like they didn't move, they didn't talk, they didn't do anything. And Derek was just like, "Well, what if we?" I said I wasn't gonna name names, Garrett. He just fucking out of the match.
Do it.
All right, so we're wrestling Cade and the now banished and arrested G Raver. And he had a manager, and she was like new or something, and she just wasn't doing anything. And Derek was trying very desperately to get her to like chase him or bip him or do something, and she just wasn't doing it. And
Ah,
so I just I just feel like him, and I'm not gonna say rightfully so because he did not handle the Derek thing professionally or well at all. And I'm glad he came around. But like I get he probably saw a lot of managers coming in, and it's just like, hey, I'm here. This is my boy Jeff. He's gonna put on a Hawaiian shirt and be my manager, and then the
yeah.
guy's a drizzling shits because
Yeah.
nobody trains to be a manager, nobody transitions. But Derek has wrestled for 11, 12 years. He trained with he has experience training with Kowalski. He did WWE tryouts. He wrestled in South America. Like the dude knows,
Yeah.
and he proves it every time.
Yep. Money. Like I said to you, too bad he wasn't around now. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah,
this wasn't from 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
yeah. We say a lot that like I especially me. I say a lot that I was born way too late. Um,
Yeah.
I talk to Masa Hori a lot. He was always just like, he was like, if you were born earlier, he's like, he said, the Von Erichs and Giant Baba would be arguing over you, and you'd be in Japan making all this money and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I was like, I don't know if I would be, but I had a much better chance doing it back then than I do now. I was like, I'm just in the way wrong decade, and
Yeah.
same thing with a lot of us feel that way because being that we were trained the Kowalski way, like we are trained very old school.
Yeah.
Everything we do, our mentality, our style, like a lot of our stuff is very old school. And that's caused some issues for some of us, some places, because we'll be places and we might get word from a promoter to do something. And we're just like, that makes no sense, and then they get mad that we say it makes no sense, and we might say it makes no sense, but let's do this, and our way might make more sense and be logical, but now we seem like we're booking our own shit or we don't want to do business. But it's just the way we're trained and brought in, and we
Right.
want everything to make sense.
Yeah. When you broke in, did you get stretched?
Yeah, yes, not to the extent. The first thing at our school that happens, um, you get taught to lock up outside the ring.
Yep.
And someone will work with you and just teach you how to lock up and just do it over and over and over. And once you learn how to lock up, you get in the ring, so you learn how to be far away from the rope, how you circle, how you step, lock up. And once you go
Yep.
from that, we'll move you around, loosey goosey, follow me, go where I put you, and all that. And then your
The steering
first,
wheel.
yes,
Steering wheel.
yep. And then the first test is once all that's good, we always back you in the corner. We do a break, tuck your arms right underneath the ropes and hold them. And then everyone gets quiet. We back off and we chop you at like 60%. If you sell, you pass. If you try
Yep.
to act like a tough guy, the shirt goes up and you get 150. And then we make you sell. And
Yeah.
that's always like the first test. And then once we learn to chain, it's always work, shoot, work, shoot, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it was never really like a stretch you to see if you don't come back sort of thing, but
Yeah.
we got stretched.
Yeah. See, Loke and I, we would get punched. I'm gonna say like 70% for real. Because we learned old school way where it's like TC would be like, if you get in a position to have to wrestle Greg Valentine or Johnny Valiant in an old school match and everything, I need to make sure that you guys are going to be able to take this. You know what I mean? And
Okay,
that's what
yeah.
that's really what it was. And the minute that one bad weekend, and that's all it was. You know what I mean? And it felt like you were in a car wreck and you were healed up by the following week, so that you're okay. But and part of me saying that's what's missing today. All right. So one of your posts that you had out, I saw earlier this week, is um, proud to be affiliated with like Flower City Academy and the training schools that are like doing stuff out there to like, you know, bringing in guys that are veterans to work with the newer generation and everything, which I'm all on board with. I mean, any type of knowledge that we could pass down is great, and to contribute to the cause and everything like that. Um, Part of me is also saying to myself, like, I think there's also a problem in New York State where a lot of people are starting to take that route and going to wrestling schools, not finishing, and then getting used on other shows, uh, and they have no business getting used. You know, I'll
Yeah,
I'll I'll, I'll make a comment. Like there's a promotion down in Albany here, run by a guy that claims that he was a Kowalski guy, but when asked by other people that were at Kowalski's, didn't even know he existed.
who is it?
Jerry Idle,
I've never heard that name.
yeah, and you know he he
I was
he, he
wondering because there was I can't remember his name now, but there used to be a guy who used to claim he trained with Kowalski and then us at Syracuse. I really wish I could remember his name. Um what the hell was his name? But like my uncle one time, he goes, "Hey, I was at a garage getting my car fixed, and some guy said that he wrestles for 2CW and trained at your school and Kowalski and stuff." And he told me his name, and I was like, "I don't know who that is." And then I asked Springgate, and like Springgate's like head exploded, and he was like, "Fuck that guy!" And he never did anything and all this, and it definitely wasn't him. But I was wondering if that's who you were going to mention, but it definitely wasn't
no,
Idol.
no, it was Jerry Idle, and he would have some like Shockwave the robot down there working out with people, and Sean knows what he's doing and stuff like that. But then it would have like Fox Vineyard and a couple other people down there like training people, and I'll just leave that well enough alone. And but there's some people that come out of the school. One that was a long outstanding Northeast champion over at ICW for a while, who and there's other people that come from the school that, seem like they're a bunch of entitled fucking babies. And I'm saying to myself, I'm like, well, go figure. They're not, they weren't brought in fucking right. You know what I mean? Like, someone with the initials RR, Rick Recon, I don't give a shit. actually went on a record and said to Mike King, he lost his push when I came into Immortal. I'm like, really? At that point when he was here, I wasn't even a booker, I wasn't even a matchmaker. So how the hell does that make even any sense? And he goes, I have no idea. I'm like, fuck him, do whatever you want with him and everything, but you know, it's not even true.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But it's just like the days of entitlement where people think that they're fucking owed something is just driving me nuts. I mean, from day one in wrestling school, I was always told that I'm going to get out of the business what I put into it
Same.
and what I work hard to achieve of it. And, there's people that go through this school that I'm hearing about that it just seem like the most entitled fucking brats that I've ever heard in my fucking life. And I don't get it. And one, I mean, they don't know that their person isn't legit, but, if you ask Zachary Springate, who's been there, who's been affiliated with Kowalski forever, if you ever heard of the name Jerry Idle, because I know he was asked before and he didn't even know who he was.
Mm.
And this is a guy that runs a training facility for a wrestling school. You know what I mean? And I'm saying to myself, well, no figure. He bullshitted his way to get people to come in as a clientele. He's not legit. And he's training people that are half-assed. Go figure. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So it's like that, part of me, my only issue with wrestling schools is like that's what it is. Like, not having any type of validity to it. Like, and I even pitched this before. I pitched this to the athletic commission before. I pitched employing myself and 4 other people throughout New York State that had long reputations in New York State for conducting good business and training school experience, and to be almost like a board of directors for people with training schools where people would actually go and do evaluations, you know, someone that's going to actually like get a license. And because that's what athletic commission said. They're like, well, who's going to govern it? Who's going to control it? Who's going to say yay or nay? And I said, that's where you have a board of directors that would go around and have open forums and open workouts for people to get, just like Taekwondo, where they would actually go to like one remote area and actually test up for their different belts and different degrees.
Mm.
It would be something along that same line. And, if you had everybody on the same page, and then, you would initiate the licensing again and everything, maybe just maybe the business would have less assholes and untrained people in it, and less liability risks.
Yeah, I was on a show with 2W booked me, Kevin, and Springate versus a Blue World Order one time.
Yep.
So Meanie, CV, and Nova, and this was after Nova was released from WWE, and he was doing like office stuff. And Nova was like hands down the most bitter of the three because he had the office job. But
Yeah.
man, he said something that is probably the most honest to God true shit like ever. He said pro wrestling is the only trade, sport, profession in the world where somebody who could fail out of training and then open up their own school. He's like, somebody could never go to law school, drop out, and then open their own law firm.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody can go to a school for like a month, drop out, go somewhere else, say, I'm trained, open up a school, and then train somebody the most shitty way possible. And I was
Yep.
like, that's true. And
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
In my school, I've seen people who showed up, couldn't cut it. They were around for a couple months, didn't progress, weren't good enough, got sick of training, and went somewhere else, started working, started getting booked, and then some of them started running a wrestling school. And I'm just sitting here just being like, this is madness. Absolute madness. I used to
Yep.
say as a joke, I was like, if we can't get people to like regulate this, then in New York State, pro wrestling rings should be like buying a gun where you have to do like a background check,
Yep.
and nobody can buy a wrestling ring without passing a background check first. I was like, maybe that'll help.
Yeah. Yeah, I just it happens every day. It
Yeah.
happens every day, and I mean, you know, I understand like some people that are in this type of industry have a hard time following. They may not be like the smartest academic people in the world and struggle throughout school and struggle with taking direction on how things are supposed to be and how you do A, B, C, and D and how it relates to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But and I know everybody's like, we're all like Baskin Robbins flavors. It's 152 different flavors of wrestlers out there, on everybody's beliefs and how they handle stuff and how they train and how they do stuff. But for the most part, it's still the same language, it's still the same letters, and it's still the same numbers, and it's not that much different. And for for someone to leave one school and go to another school, or go to one school, start it and everything, then think that they know it all, and then fucking go into business for themselves and go out there and get work. I don't get it. I don't understand how
No.
anybody could do it. Um, part of me, because I mean I've seen so much garbage out there, dude. Like it's just, I have people that send me friend requests all the time, and I'll sit there and be like, I'll ask somebody like, "Oh, you're friends with this person? What are they? Oh, it's someone that's blackballed and everything, probably just kissing your ass to try to get a spot." I'm like, oh Jesus, where did they train? Oh, they were over here and everything, and then they dropped out, and then they're working over this place that pays people with soda and pizza. I'm like, no thanks. You know what I mean? I hate to be a jerk, not my intention, but no, I just don't have time for that shit. You know what I mean? And it's full. I mean, everything that I'm hearing, you know, there's so much garbage out there. People are doing fucking seminars that aren't even good workers themselves, and I'm saying to myself, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm what's wrong with the business for being too old speaking. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
holy
yes, I do
shit,
know what you do mean. I know what you mean 100%, man. I dude, I have had a very long standing reputation of being like the biggest asshole. I've been told so many times about people shit talking me about. Now this is years ago. I'm pretty sure I get along with people better right now. I don't think anybody has any heat with me. As far as I know, aside from a few people who are just trash human beings and I don't want anything to do with them, by and large, I think I'm okay with people. But I know for a long time, my feeling towards the business, the level of respect, the level of paying your dues, and things like that got me in a lot of trouble with a lot of people, got me blackballed from some locker rooms. And I have heard fuck brute, fuck pun more than once. Somebody told Skyros once, fuck brute, and the horse he rode in on. Somebody
oh
once
shit,
said, fuck brute, his style is outdated, he doesn't know what he's doing. Both of those guys I'm okay with now. So both of those guys, we're cool, we're friends now. But like
yeah,
I've heard it a lot. And it's just because like with me, I always like stem all this stuff back to, and I always say this, and I go either if I was in 2CW and I did what that person did, my bags would have been out in the fucking alley, and either Josh would have bitch slapped me or he would have had Brody do it. I
yep,
was like, I would have got a receipt, my shit would have been gone, and I wouldn't be booked for 6 months.
yep,
Or I said, if I did that shit at school, I was like, Axe would be stretching my ass in the ring and breaking a finger or something,
yeah,
Um, because it got to the point one time where Kevin Graham and I showed up to training. Springate pulled us aside, and he just goes, "What are you guys doing?" And we're so confused. We're like, "What are we doing?" He's just like, I've been hearing that kids from the school are like fucking around and they're not like doing ring crew and they're slacking and stuff, or people are showing up late or not showing up for training and all this stuff. And we're just like, okay. He just goes, you guys have been in the school long enough. You should be policing it. You should be doing something. If people are not in line, you get them in line. And me and Graham are like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And from that point on, we were ripping into people who were slouching on ring crew. If people are dicking around in training, we'd be like, knock it the fuck off, go over there and do 100 squats or something. Like, yeah, we
Right.
started policing stuff because that's how we were, trained.
Yeah.
Um, there was one time, when I was wrestling for GSW in Pennsylvania, there was a kid just came out of a training school called Backbreakers, and this kid is brand new, like maybe 6, 7 months in. All he does is wrestle for his backbreaker shows. He did a couple paid seminars where because he paid, he got to be in a battle royal or something. But he wrestles maybe once a month in those like 6 or 7 months. This dude was walking around like he is a 13-year vet, and he is talking down to people. He is demanding things. He's telling people he's doing all this stuff, and he has such an attitude problem that finally the promoters like were getting sick of it, and it got to the point where he started shit talking. He's another like bigger guy. He was a bigger guy who was never seen in gym. Um, Back then I was in pretty good shape. But he was like shit talking me behind my back, and he was accusing me of stealing his moves, and I forgot what other stuff, but he was like saying like how like he was gonna like take me out back and like show me like who the real man is and like stuff like that. And it was getting out of hand. And
Huh.
I was just like, if this happens again, I'm gonna kick your fucking ass. And it got to the promoters, and they're just like, no, we're sick of it. Like, you have our permission to office him and take care of this. So I told him, I was like, okay, I will. And uh between that point and the next show, this kid chimed in and said something online. I really wish I could remember what, but he said something to me, and I commented back. I go, I'm not saying anything else. I go, this is it. I will see you in the ring before the next show. So I got to the venue. I went in the locker room. I put my bag down. I saw him. I go, you, me, ring now. Guy walks out. Everybody in the locker room fucking hates this kid. I felt bad because this was like the first time. This was right before IWTV like started, and they were like testing everything with GSW by live streaming on Facebook. So like Orange Cassidy was there. Deshaun Pratt was there. Like there's some bigger guys there for the first time, and they're around the ring. And I go in and I go, "Hey guys, can I have the ring?" And they let me have it. I bring the kid in, and I just like start tearing into him. And I'm just like, who do you think you are? How are you going to treat the promoters like this? I go, your spot isn't guaranteed. You're not guaranteed this ring. Um, like you need to be thankful for it. They can take it away anytime they want. You should be respecting everybody in the locker room. You should be respecting your peers and like the vets. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not trying to put myself over, but this was after I went to Japan. I go, you got me and Jay Freddy over there. We both went to Japan. I go, you could be asking us questions, but instead you're acting like you're better than us. I was like, you got this guy over here. You got this guy working for CZW. I was like, there's people here, but you're disrespect them. And the kid has got his arms crossed like a little kid going, yeah, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like doing it. And I'm getting angrier and angrier. And I was just like, you better start taking this serious. And the kid's like, oh, sorry. As soon as he did that, I slapped him across the face as hard as I could because I was so
Good.
pissed.
Good.
This dude goes, you don't get to slap me. Tackles me down. I spin him over, so I'm on top of him, and I got like his arms pinned down, and I got like my forearm up like this, and I go, "You calm down right now, or like I'm gonna bash your fucking face in." I was like, "Calm down, calm down." And then finally, the promoters like are coming in and like took him, and he got pissed, he threw shit, and like he left. And like I apologized to Deshaun, I apologized to Cassie. I was like, I'm sorry, guys, I had to like see that. Deshaun Pratt was like, no, like he goes, that's how I was trained. He goes, I loved seeing that. I never see that anymore. But I was just like, if there was a problem, the promoters came to me and I handled the problem, and there was never a problem with that kid ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. It needed to be done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the promoter shouldn't allow that shit anyway, especially if they're the boss. I mean, you know, I don't know if it's just growing a set of balls and saying enough is enough.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
that's hard for a lot of people to actually do, to actually just, because you don't want to be that guy. When you're in a management and ownership type role, you don't want to be that guy. You want to be one of the boys and
Yep.
get along with everybody and let things go. But then if things get taken out of context and taken away too far, you gotta put your foot down.
You
You know
have
what
it.
I mean?
Yeah.
But right back to our original comment, since we got a little bit ahead. If Josh was involved with that show and said that Brody was going to be there for night 2, it would have happened. He's tight with the family too. I can
Yeah.
almost guarantee you. That would have been the situation.
Well, I like to think, and like I said, like it's a heartbreaking thing to think like I almost had my opportunity, and then tragically I wasn't able to. But it's also nice to be like I was almost there.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the same thing too. Like I go through with Shane. Like John would have loved to seen like what he's done so far and
Mhm.
everything like that. And you know, I'm sure he's proud of him and everything like that. But just like the fact that Shane ended up debuting and what he's done with his dark matches with
Mhm.
AEW and everything like that, I know he would have been wicked proud of and everything. And you know, um, yeah, it's just one of those things that makes you just kind of like, what do you do? What do you
Yeah.
do? It just but yeah, I'm sorry. Next conversation.
So, what were we talking about before that?
We were like immortal and being like where I am right now, starting
Yeah.
to a little bit in regards to like stuff going on. I think because we touched base a little bit on immortal and the booking decisions and stuff that kind of like progressing forward. But uh maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's what was going to be the dovetail somewhat.
Yeah, yeah, we're kind of talking because I was kind of mentioning like always like where we're going and things like that. So booking the way the stuff did, and I guess kind of even going back a little bit more about like do you think it was fair to me to say that like the last year and a half that the show's kind of like hit like a stagnant point, like it was almost you know the matches were just matches. There wasn't really much looking forward because, like, the Garrett and Nick thing, that was all building to something. That
Right,
wasn't that wasn't a one off. That wasn't like what good match could we have. It's like, hey, let's do this thing and then we'll do this other thing.
yep,
You did that, now you got a lumberjack match, and now you got like stuff going on. So like that's building to something in the future. You
right,
can even go with me and be like, well, I had a match with Fulton, I had this match with Loke, so now I'm kind of being in the position of being that type of match, that type of wrestler. Where are we going from here? I lost, I won. What am I doing next? You
right.
got the tag team number one contenders match. Now that's setting up like a lot of stuff here is like looking towards the future. So,
Uh-huh.
like with you in that position, is it just like, do you kind of like start ahead and work backwards? Or are you just like kind of being like, okay, this makes sense and we can do this, and then where do we go from here? And kind of like how far are, because you're talking about streaming. So like if there's gonna be the first show, like this is our first stream, you want to pad that as best as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I'm
want you want the casual fans. They might not know
yep,
who Brute Van Slyke is, but they might know what kind of match or what the opponent is, and they
right,
might not know who Nick and Garrett are. But if you show a 5 minute package, what happened in Utica, now they're into it.
right, right. And that comes with we talked about, you mentioned about booking and streaming and everything like that. My goal is to get with Mike and create a booking committee and start looking at at least 4 shows ahead of knowing who we're going to want and what we're going to do, how we're going to get there, and laying it out. I mean, as you know, everything is card substitute change because people get
Yes.
hurt and everything like that. But you know, we really don't have too much of a problem when it comes to um, booking and giving dates out and starting angles and creating something. And like my goal is to get 4 months worth of shows, written out, know what we're looking at, what's expected to be the bigger venues. Like, we talked briefly, if we run 6 shows at Immortal, 3 of them we'll be bringing in names for. And the rest of them, we should be growing up our own homegrown talent.
Yes.
Okay. We don't need names. If we do it the right way, we don't need it.
They should enhance what's there.
Right, exactly. And Mike understands this. Totally is in agreement with it. As is his son Nick. And that, we're gonna be doing different things like that and saying, okay, take like my son and I, for example, we won the first ever tag titles. We wrestled against the Saitos, wrestled against, beat Defiance for it, wrestled against Creed, wrestled against Colin and Cheech, try to get some solid defenses behind us, and with some of them that are very, very good, excellent quality wrestlers that are going to bring validity to everything. Things didn't work out with Kenneth Terrell and Nick, so be it, you know what I mean? But, moving forward, having a rough idea as far as who's out there, it can't always be the same main players. We've got to have some fresh faces and other things coming on and look and find out, like Megabyte Ronnie. I'll use him as an example. He's new coming on in, hell of a body. Okay. Hell of a look. Ability, good. Not the greatest worker from what I've seen, but for what he does possess, and part of our job is to take everybody's positive attributes and understand them, take their shortcomings and say, okay, well, here's how we can use this person the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take someone like that, mix things up, like my son recently just turned heel. You may not have known it, but we shot it and it's in the can. And he's a much better heel as he is a baby face. You know what I mean? And it's just mixing things up, creating great storylines, and hopefully, knock on wood, having excellent stories being told in matches that are going to really grab the attention and the imagination of the fans, be like, and have them on the edge of their seat saying, man, what's next? I can't wait. I got to make sure, we want to get it to the point where, I said, Mike, I said, you got to start making up the tickets for the next show before this show's over, so we can do pre-sales. You know what I mean? So, because if we get to that point and we develop great storylines and great angles and great finishes, they're gonna want either one or two things happen. It's gonna hurt the boys for selling gimmicks at the gimmick table because they're gonna be going and buying more tickets for the next show, or we're gonna start even just doing stacking the house moving forward. And here's the thing, and in your position, like for being someone that's on the show, I get it. Like having a monthly Immortal show, with the exception of the 2 months that is off, is a great thing. It may be just a little bit too much. 10 may get bumped down to 7. You know what I mean? So things can get really written out good, promoted the right way. Because if we run 7 and pack the house and turn profits compared to 10 and not making payroll and having the boss take money out of his own account to cover everything, we're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? I'd rather put on 7 extremely successful shows. I mean, truth be told, right now, I'm working at a show at Duanesburg, where I live. I want to run a show outdoor, late spring, before the end of the school year, on a baseball field, under the lights. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I got my foot in the door to make that happen. It also helps being a wrestling coach at Duanesburg. That also helps. being able to have those opportunities. But little things that, like, if we do it and we do it right and we pack the house and the, all the angles make sense, all the boys are on the same and girls are on the same pace and the same mindset. It's great business. You know what I mean? And I mean that's booking 101. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's drawing a house. Like, I want us to be able to go to people and say, hey, here's what I got lined up for you, Garrett Holiday, for the next 4 shows. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, and we're gonna start dovetailing it into this. You know what I mean? I know there's been talk about you and Garrett going for the tag title runs and everything like that, which is great. You know what I mean? I'm a huge advocate for it. You know what I mean? Because the history is there between Ben and you and Blaze and him. It makes sense. You know what I mean? That's an already made gimmick. You know what I mean? But Tunnel Vision, knowing that whatever direction that goes in, you still need the American Strong Styles, the Power Supplies, the Black and Gold, all those tag teams. No different than what we needed with the Saito brothers to also make the titles mean something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So no different than what Garrett Holiday wants to do with the Northeast belt right now. It's like his goal is to, ever since he won it, is to make it mean something, make it make sense, give structure and credibility back to the title. No different than what Bill Collier, and I'm not saying that the heavyweight belt needs it, because if you look at it, Papa Don, hell of a wrestler. Skyros, hell of a wrestler. Dango, having him around that
I
title
think you're
picture all
forgetting
year.
somebody.
What's that?
I think you're forgetting one of the champions.
Well, aside from Bill Collier, but
no, I had it a while ago.
Yeah, but I wasn't here for that.
Well, maybe you should have been. Maybe it would have been better.
The intention, as much as I love Kayla, at some point she's going to have to do some. I'm not saying that she wouldn't do business, but we need to start doing different things with that to make the women's division even more intricate and telling stories and everything like that. I mean, shit, I'd love to bring in Short Sleeve Samson and have a couple midget matches over the next year. That could be like an oddity match for the fan base to make them say, wow, that was really cool that Immortal did that. You know what I mean? Like it's cool. They're having a wide variety, or even the intergender match, the working relationship that Immortal has now with Upstate Pro Wrestling. We may have to bring that cage down and have some cage matches at Immortal. You know what I mean? We may, if the show is right and everything is there and the moon and the stars are aligned, anything can happen, as long as we're smart enough to know how to write out angles for everybody on what they're doing.
Garrett says he wants Hornswoggle versus Father Derek. He's been asking for that match for like a year.
And you know what? I bet you 10-1 Father Derek would outwork him.
Yeah. It'd be a fun match.
Absolutely. He's smart enough to know what he has to do. That's the thing. And realistically, it's not much at all anyway. But still, But I mean, yeah, that's the stuff that we just sit there. Is Garrett Holiday just listening in the background, like popping off of little things?
Yeah. He's been in the chat saying some stuff. Yeah, that's
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
He says you're damn right. We're going for them tag titles. I was saying this on Twitter the other day when I posted on Twitter and I said, hey, what's everyone's favorite title that looks like another title? Because I was like, my favorite is there's a Ring of Honor that looks like the UWF title. And I said, I've always liked the ECW tag titles that look like the WWF Intercontinental title.
Yep.
And then somebody posted a picture of like the WWF World title and the NWA TV title. And they're like, oh, this has always been my favorite look. And I go, you know what? the second I saw the Immortal Tag Team titles, they had that design. I went right up to Garrett. I was like, "Yo, we got to win those." I was like, I need that title." I was
Well,
like, "They look beautiful."
do you know what that belt is replicated? Not replicated, but molded from?
It's either got to be the NWA TV title, the WWF World title, or well, then what is it?
NWA National Heavyweight Championship.
Oh, that was gonna be my next test. I wasn't sure if the national looked like that or not, but I
Oh
thought it
yeah,
did. Okay.
yeah. That's the national belt and everything like that. So, um, I just I'm also a big, like the old Florida and Southern old school style.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
glad you said that because you know what title I want, like what kind of title I want brought back because I want to be in this division so bad. And it's going to be really hard in New York because the name is
brass.
going to. Yes. Yes, I've been begging for somebody to bring back the brass knuckles title so I can wrestle. I want to be the New York brass knuckle heavyweight champion so bad. And just like I've talked to Patrick about this. I go, I want a brass knuckles division where it's just like the brawling, the hard hitting, and all that. And like I know brass knuckles are illegal in New York, and the commission might say something, but just like it's the division with no rules and it's just like the big dudes hitting and this the old nasty shit. And oh, I want a brass knuckles titles to be brought back so bad. It's just something I miss.
What about if we put a pair of brass knuckles on a pole, like you would have a coal miner's glove match, and the person that gets to it first and is able to put their opponent away, like one person. You said we have two, one on one side, one on the
Mhm.
other, and you have to get that one, and your opponent's got to get that one. Whoever can get it first and use it to their advantage, their respective brass knuckles could be the champ. Would be the winner of the match,
Yeah,
and use that as bylaws for the brass knuckles
yeah,
championship.
yeah. That would work. Another thing I said because I don't know if you're familiar with ICW No Holds Barred out of like New Jersey and stuff, but like they're kind of based off No Holds Barred, the movie, the like with Stan Hansen scene. So instead of ropes, they put chains around the ring. And I always
Ooh,
thought like that would be a really good blow off match in a brass knuckles division where you take down the ropes and you hang chains around. I just always thought that was cool.
as compared to barbed wire in Japan,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
And
Well,
so
I was like,
whoever gets whipped into it the first time's got to sell it just like they're getting barbed wired in the back,
yep, and explosions are going off behind them.
right? Right.
See, you got it. You got it.
Well, just knowing, being smart enough to know how to work that stuff. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yes. Which
That's
is
that's the
yeah.
catch. That's the
That's why I
catch
said it's
20.
got to be like that division with those type of wrestlers who know how to do that kind of stuff. Like what me and
Yeah.
Loke and me and Fulton and stuff are doing. Look, there's a lot of them out there.
Put
Like
put
you
it
were
right up there
talking.
in the head and knowing, and
That's Dick
the
Justice and
chain.
I. We had a dog collar match, and there's
Yeah.
this. Yep, there was one with me that's gotten the freaking chain going across and right through his mouth, making a go.
Yeah. Do you talk to Dick?
Yeah, yeah. We
Will you,
talk and
will
we
you
hang
tell
out
me?
every now and then.
Will you tell him I said hi?
I sure will. I'll tell him right now. I don't. He
He
probably won't text me back, but I mean, not for a while. But I'll
I
text him
just
right now.
tell him Uncle Chip says hi and he loves and misses you.
Thank you, Ma. All right, I'll tell him right now.
Cool.
Yep.
I've always been high on him. Sweetheart, total sweetheart.
Oh, absolutely. He is one of the guys that like I got along with like super easy, super early. Like our personalities, the stuff we have in common. Like I said, like when we hang out, if I'm over at his place, like we'll just sit in the recliners and just talk and shoot the shit. And just one time we're like the catalyst for me wanting to do this, we're just hanging out and our wives are on the couch talking, but we're just like pulling up our old matches on YouTube and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, remember that time like I T-boned you and I put you through the ring?" And Dick's like, "Remember that time I broke your ass bone?" And it's just like it was
Yeah.
all a good one. Yeah,
What
Dick
you're
is the greatest.
are you talking about your tailbone, meaning your ass bone?
Yeah, yeah.
I've broken mine 3 times and it
Oh,
sucks.
oh, oh.
Yeah.
Too many
No more,
leg
no more
drops.
leg drops off the top rope.
You hear that, Garrett? You got to be careful with those top rope elbow drops. You're gonna break a hip.
I think he lands on his feet first.
Hey, I'm just letting you know that before every Immortal show, I check the ring and those ropes, and like as soon as those ropes are tight enough, I'm fucking coming off the top of those. I've been saving that for like 2 years.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
my
I
top rope
mean,
splash. I've been waiting to bust out, but I need sturdy top ropes because I don't want to go up there and break them and fall off.
yeah, I'm still nursing I jammed my middle finger taking the suplex from Ben. Ironically, I was on the top rope and he was on the second.
Mhm.
Taking the suplex last weekend, where when I came down, this actual hand jammed into the mat, so my middle finger, one's bigger than the other one.
I
Like
can see that.
this whole knuckle just got jammed, so it was like hit, sell, out, pop, right back
Oh,
out. I'm like shit. So
oh,
all week it's been like this, and I don't know if I told you this. I am a modified assistant JV wrestling coach at Duanesburg High School.
oh.
Um, so practice this week was real interesting. When you be going for risk control with somebody and teaching the student, the kids about,
Mhm.
risk control and shooting singles and doubles and, all that stuff. And it's like you got the finger totally, taped up before I get going. So like my middle finger is like completely taped up. And they're like, "You all right there, coach?" I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm okay," and doing stuff, and then you jam it in. You're like, you know what I mean? But that's
Mm.
another reason why I don't mind being off this week. Um, but I am going to have to wrap it up pretty soon because I have to be up in 5 hours because I have 11 kids. I have 11 wrestlers competing tomorrow at the very first JV tournament in Shenendehowa.
Oh, all right then. Well, let's get to this tail end gimmick here. So,
Absolutely.
chat, you know the drill. While I hit Chip here with my rapid fire questions, I need 3 professional wrestlers from you. The first good 3 I see could be any wrestler from any era and be as specific as you want. And then once we're ready, we're gonna give those a Chip, and we're gonna play Tag Feud Barry. But before that, Uncle Chip, first question.
Yes.
You're on the
Yes.
road from any time, all time. What is your favorite go to food to get on the road?
I'm going to say, so on the road, go to Subway.
Subway? Uh,
Subway.
when I first started actually wrestling, I had the Subway rewards card and I
Yep.
just was eating free subs all the time for how much I eat there. Loved it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I always thought it was the best bang for the buck and that it would fill up
Absolutely.
my stomach way more than McDonald's or Burger King. You know what I mean?
Yep. Okay, second one. You're on the road. All time favorite style of music to listen to while driving?
Classic rock, Pink Floyd, Journey, um, Doobie Brothers, total classic rock.
All right, I dig it. I love it. I love it. You're like, yeah, you're like the first one who went classic rock with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, my wife Journey, she loves Journey. Yeah, that's
I
that's one of the styles I love listening to.
even like what like favorite concerts like White Snake, Doobie Brothers, like I said, Journey. I mean, in concert, just phenomenal, and just like that's what even Sticks going into like classic
Oh
rock
yeah,
and
love
stuff.
Sticks.
Just we have these drives, 11 o'clock, midnight. You're 2 hours away from home. You know, blue collar man from Sticks, and just crank down the window a little bit and blare it up on the car stereo, and it's just like total energy, burst, and you're just like,
Yep.
yeah, you know what I mean?
I do, 100%, 100%. Um, on the road, go to favorite. This one might be new. Do you have a favorite podcast you like to listen to?
Something to wrestle with.
That's a good one. I like that one. I used to work overnights at Planet Fitness. That was my go-to. I'd listen
Yeah.
to a lot of that one, and then Jim Cornette and stuff. I still need to listen to Foley's because I love Mick Foley, and I want to listen to his podcast.
Have you had a chance to check out Sean Oliver and Kevin Nash yet?
I have watched clips of them on YouTube, and I really like
Yeah.
listening to Kevin Nash. He's a really good one to listen to. He's got good
Yeah.
stories, and he's got a really good mind for stuff.
Yeah, I started to listen to a little bit of that recently and everything. I mean, it's still, you know, it's still hard to break away from, something to wrestle with,
Hmm.
but I'm going to say Sean Oliver and Kevin Nash is definitely a close second. Um, and anything Honky Tonk Man on YouTube.
Damn.
If you
Honky
if
Tonk
you could,
Man.
Sean Oliver and Honky Tonk um, timeline was just phenomenal. Like I'll find that on YouTube and put it on the car stereo and listen to that too. And just, I mean, old school Southern style Honky Tonk Man. I mean, I don't know if there's anything better than that, and how bitter he is.
Yeah, he is
Even
bitter.
and even Good Brothers, even like Gallows and Anderson for their stuff is phenomenal too.
Oh, I never even knew they did one.
Oh my God, yeah, them Rocky Romero, they've got a lot.
Hmm.
And they'll even do stuff with like Jericho they used to a long time ago, but like talking shop.
Yeah.
Yep,
Doc Ellis, he forever ago, he was on Cole Cabana's podcast, and that was like my favorite episode for a long time. Was
yep,
him on there, so that'd probably be a good one. Um,
absolutely.
Last rapid fire. You're on the road. What's your favorite go-to car karaoke song to sing along to?
Cold as Ice by Foreigner.
Oh, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like it.
Out loud, very loud. You know what I mean?
Garrett, have you ever experienced this? Have you heard Uncle Chips singing some?
No, but
No.
JP Black has. JP Black and I used to sing karaoke coming back from Vermont a lot, and it was tremendous.
Where's JP Black these days? Sorry to keep it
He's
going, but
he's in this area. He
okay.
actually he came to Shane's graduation party a couple years ago. Um, he's got a sweetheart of a girlfriend. Both of them, had been married before and everything. They got a really good, really good thing. I know he's had back problems for a
Okay.
while now and everything. So that's what really ended it for him. And he's one of those guys that will tell you he can't come around wrestling because then the bug will bite him and he'll want to get in, and then he'll just be in pain forever. Like it's just not even in the equation.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last time I saw him, he was like agenting for Dynasty because I wrestled Sean Studd, Big John Studd's son,
Yeah.
and I showed up and he was like agenting, and I was like, "Oh, what's the finish?" And he's like, "Oh, whatever." I was like, "So Sean's up?" He goes, "No, you're up." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "We're not putting over Stud's son." He's like, "No, you're local. You're back here next month. You're up." And I'm like, "Well, I can't argue with that logic." So
I haven't noticed unless he changed his name, but is Sean Studd wrestling anywhere or doing anything?
so I'm not 100% on this. I do know like a year or two ago, he announced he was retiring because he had brain cancer and they were
Oh,
able to remove it. Uh, I think it was brain cancer. He had something wrong with his brain and they're able to like take care of it for him. But he said that was going to end his career. And then like a few months ago, somebody was posting about like a Maryland Championship Wrestling show and it was like him. And I went, wait, is he wrestling again? But no one ever answered me. So last I knew he was done, but I
Yeah.
thought I saw something that looked like he wasn't. So I'm not 100% on that.
Okay. Because you would have figured that with the name value and the family lineage that
Yep.
it'd be inevitable that he wouldn't go up like
Yeah,
to the big
absolutely.
leagues.
Yep.
You know.
All right. So looks like we got our three. Okay, there's a third one. All right, Uncle Chip. We're
Yep.
gonna end this on Tag Feud Barry. So these three wrestlers, they're not very specific, so you can take it however you want. You're gonna choose which one you're going to be a tag team with, which one you're gonna have a long feud with, and which one you're gonna bury and never have to deal with. You can base it off of anything you want. It could be based off of who you just really like, but typically people tend to go with what's gonna draw the most money.
Okay. And you said Barry as far as Bury.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
You're gonna bury him so you'll never see him again.
Okay.
You're gonna go office and say don't book him anymore. And your three
Okay.
wrestlers are Dave McCormick says Terry Gordy.
Yep.
Garrett says the Great Muda.
Okay.
And then Carrie said she was drawing a blank, so Garrett also said Kevin Von Erich.
Okay. I would tag with Gordy, feud with Muda, and bury Kevin Von Erich.
You know what? That is exactly my answer. Because me and Terry Gordy, we're gonna tear shit up in Texas and Japan. I'm so mad at Muda for misting me, so I'm gonna feud with him, and I'm gonna bury Von Erich.
But you know what though? I'm surprised Garrett Holiday. He knows what kind of a mark I am for what era of wrestling. I'm surprised no Arn Anderson was thrown into that because I am like a huge Arn Anderson mark.
Well, Garrett gave me another three, and he said have him do these three. So if you want to do a bonus one real quick, he
Okay.
gave us Scott Hall, Hayabusa, and Chavo Guerrero.
Oh, team with Chavo, feud with Scott Hall, Barry Hayabusa.
Mm. I get that. That yeah, I definitely get that with you. For me, I am tagging with Hall because I'm thinking AWA,
Yep.
even though it's probably NWO Scott Hall, but still, I'm going to feud with Hayabusa because I think I can get a Mike Awesome level feud from FMW with him. So I'm gonna have to bury Chavo.
Gotcha.
But
Do you know?
I'm glad we got something different there.
But do you know why I picked Chavo?
No.
I worked him on a Shotgun Saturday Night, my very first time with WWF.
Oh really?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Supposed to be 4 minutes. I came out, got heat. I'm getting checked out by Tim White. And he asked me, "Are you from this area?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "All right, we'll sneak attack Chavo from behind." And I'm like, "Does Chavo know this?" And he goes, "They're telling him." I'm like, "Okay." And then we'll just go into his stuff. Sneak attack from behind. I got great heat in Albany. Boom, 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 boom. Send off, duck, flying cross body, 1, 2, kick out, body slam, leg drop. Latino heat. Went into one more thing. Up, frog splash. 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
4 minutes.
that's awesome. That's great. I love it.
And he was the nicest guy, without a doubt.
That's what I like to hear. I like how they're just like, oh, you're from around here. All right,
Yeah.
you could jump him. Go kick his ass for a minute.
Exactly.
That's great.
I'm like, does Chavo know this? And I'm like, I almost had a heart attack. And you're like, yeah, you're okay. And then, boom, I got a pop. You know what I mean? Send off duck flying crossbody. He gets booed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then I knew I was fucked and everything. But that was the main reason that I went Chavo though.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chip, I can't thank you enough for coming on here,
No,
especially such short notice the day after Thanksgiving. It
no,
was an
no.
absolute blast. I loved being able to talk all NMW stuff and backstage things and a lot of
Yeah,
great stories. I really appreciate it. And one thing I got to mention before you go,
yeah,
I really got to put over. We kind of mentioned earlier when Dad passed away. My
yeah,
dad passed away 2 days before I wrestled for Immortal, and
yeah,
my brain, my soul, everything was all sorts of messed up. And I was in the ring, I was stretching, I didn't know I was going to go on that day. And Chip came up to me and he just like grabbed me. He's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? I want to make sure you're okay." And it was like it meant so much that Chip cared that much to check on me and make sure everything was good. And I just want you to know, in case you didn't, that meant like the absolute world to me because I
yeah,
was in a really, obviously, it was in a really weird place. And, 2 days later, now I'm in a ring and a whole new
yeah,
thing for me. So I just want you to know, like, that always meant a lot to me. And I really appreciate, you, caring that much about me. And
yeah,
you're a great dude,
yeah.
man.
Just remember, we always got to look out for one another. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And just we care, buddy. You know what I mean? That's probably one of the reasons why I am in the position that I'm in now, because I am kind of like father hen to a lot of people. And I've been there where I've lost family members. Like my grandfather passed the night that I wrestled, and because my family didn't want me there waiting at the house with hospice for him to go and work a show for 24/7. And when I got out to call and find out how he was, and I got no response, and I drove up to the house, and there he was getting loaded in, and he was already gone. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you know, I, you know,
Yeah.
you gotta make sure you check on people. You know what I mean? That you care about, and we all got problems. We all have issues that we're dealing with, and you know, some not as significant as others. But when you really truly you care about the locker room, you care about the boys, and that was also the right thing to do anyway, whether we were close or not. Is to still actually go up and check on somebody. It's the fucking humane thing to do, and
Yeah,
um,
yeah, but you'd be surprised that a lot of places, a lot of people, you don't even get that. It's it's all
yeah,
about themselves, what they're getting over, what they're doing, and a lot of people wouldn't really think to do that sort of thing. And I mean, overall that night it was great.
yeah,
Ben got me a card. He was really great. Richard Holiday was really great. I appreciate everything, but like you're the first one who came up to me and really like checked on me and stuff. And you
yeah.
know,
I remember that. I remember
yeah,
that.
because
Yeah,
um, I was driving back home to Rochester, and after seeing my dad, and as we were driving back, that's when my youngest sister called me, and she told me that like he passed away, and she was just like, you know, I know you're wrestling this weekend. She's like, don't not do it. She's like, we have to wait a week for him,
yeah,
because of everything, because we can't do anything for a week. Dad wouldn't want you to miss it, so she's like, if you're able to, do it, but don't
yeah.
just cancel. And I was just like, all I could think about was one time he came to a few, but one time, the first time he came to like a Rome show for 2CW to watch me wrestle. And you know growing up, he didn't really get pro wrestling. And, even though he's the one who got me into pro wrestling, like we
Yeah,
used to lay down and watch Ultimate Warrior and shit, like after
yeah,
dinner. Um,
yeah.
so like I remember him just being real proud after one of my shows. So I was like, I got to do this. It was difficult, and having you there checking on me like meant a lot to me. And there needs to be more. There needs to be more Uncle Chips in the world. Is what I'm getting at in the wrestling.
Thanks,
Well,
buddy.
in the world in general, but definitely in wrestling.
Yeah, it's just I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. I mean, I know Vince Me said the same thing the other week and everything, and uh, for me, I'm not in the position right now to like that. I in ring work and everything like that. Um, my better days are past me. Um, but I firmly believe that if I can help make a promotion better, taking care of the boys and girls, making sure that, what we're doing is we're doing everything to the best that we possibly can do, but also being that advocate and understanding. I mean, sometimes, it doesn't take much to be a good human being. It really doesn't,
Yep.
and we all have losses that we go through, and it shouldn't be a situation where it should take much thought. Someone's going through a hard time and everything like that. The right thing to do is to go and check on them and make sure a good brother or a good sister is going to be okay. That's just the right thing to do in general. I mean, I totally appreciate it, but it to help improve, like, humanity and everything like that, it shouldn't take too much for everybody else to get on that same bandwagon.
Absolutely.
So thank you, though. I appreciate that, bro.
Hey, anytime, Uncle Chip. All right, man. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. Best
Thank
of
you for
luck to
having
you all
me.
tomorrow. Hey, anytime. We'll definitely have you on for a part two. Absolutely.
Awesome.
I'd love to have you back on. But everyone else, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the chats. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for being here. I always appreciate it. Normally I would say who my guest next week is, but unfortunately I will not be back next week. I'll be driving to New Jersey for a big wrestling tryout camp thing. So
Are you gonna go do that? You're gonna go
I'm going to
do
go
it?
to that. Yep.
Sweet, sweet. Good
So
luck, brother.
thank you. So all the positive vibes, man. Brute needs his big break. I'll be
Absolutely.
riding. My wife will be driving. So
I think
sister don't
Garrett the
skip.
Holiday's coming out there too, isn't he?
Yes, I will see him there. So
Nice.
we're gonna try. I was talking to Dan, the belt guy. He said he wants
Casper.
us to do a tag match there because he thinks it would be good. So we might try to get a tag match in there, try to get that over as well. But um,
Awesome.
I might. My wife's trying to talk me into doing a live stream while we're going, so we'll see. But yeah, so I won't be here next Friday potentially, and then I just have to figure out what I'm doing in December. So thank you all guys again. Please stay tuned. Higher from the Hip will be back. Uncle Chip, thank you again. And until next
Thanks,
time,
buddy.
guys, just remember, you guys are the champs. Bye.